we were very fortunate to, and it's kind of interesting that both of these came by air. One came by airplane into the tower, so this came by air propelling Harvey. But we have overcome that. But one of the things that was standing out in both of these particular events was our first responders, our fire EMS, our people from the Public Works Department and others, our citizen groups out there working with other citizen groups, individuals helping individuals. And I think that's very, very admirable of all of us, and I think it's the way it was during 9/11 and the way it was during Harvey. And I think it's appropriate that we recognize the resilience of our citizens and the competence of our staff in Pearland and what they have accomplished. And I think we've made some darn good progress in overcoming something very, very unique, which is called the 1,000-year plan. Sorry, it may have been that, but it's behind us. And in recognition of that, I'd like for us to have about a 3-minute silent prayer in recognition, and each one of you choose your own approach to how you feel it should be conveyed to the Lord. And if you would begin with me at this point. Lord, we thank you for this, and we bless you, and we say to you, Amen.
43 minutes.
Let me open a special meeting, City Council, City of Pearland, for September the 11th, year 2017, being at least 6:15, which is the posted time for this particular event. Moving in our agenda to new business item number 1. Councilmember Carbone, would you mind presenting this for our consideration?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, first and only reading of ordinance 1546. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. I ask staff to give us a report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. As a result of the recovery, we obviously thinking ahead. There's going to be requests for construction trailers and different kinds of uses like that you wouldn't typically see, at least in the quantities we're expecting for the reconstruction efforts. And so at the last meeting, we just introduced that to you in general terms, outlined the topic, got some feedback, which is very helpful. And so Mr. McDonald and Mr. Coker worked up an ordinance for you for your consideration, which puts some guardrails around the provision of that, just so there's some registration and provision of that. And this would be up. Want to be able to start issuing these, or at least allowing these. So we'd ask for a first and only reading of this tonight.
Okay. Council have any question or comment on this item? I think it's something that I don't believe the homeowners enjoy or look forward to with a great deal of pleasure, but it's something that is a way to accommodate their family needs and so forth. So, Mr. Secretary, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ordino?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Ordinance 1546 was approved 7-0 on its first and only reading.
Moving to new business item number 2, Councilmember Moore, would you do the honor?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration of possible action, resolution number R2017-190. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, sir. At the last council meeting, we got a green light to proceed with additional areas for incorporation into the city limits, part of ETJ. Mr. Davis, the CL Davis Company is already working on and has the data for areas A and C that we've been looking at for some time. They've also done some of the field work for these other areas. We're under a very tight time crunch, and it's very important that it gets done, A, on time, and B, correctly. So we're suggesting extending the existing contract. This is a professional services contract, so we're allowed and can do this. And we've recommend the contract before you, for these services to get them completed by time frame so we can incorporate or have that consideration by the end of November.
Okay, does the council have any question or comment on this item? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, we do have a motion second on the floor.
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember Ordino,
Aye.
Councilmember Little,
Aye.
Councilmember Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Owens,
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone.
Aye.
Resolution 2017-190 was approved 7-0.
Okay. At this point, we will wait for a few minutes because we have at 6:30 a series of let me gavel this part closed at 6:21, and we'll wait just a few minutes for 6:30 when we do a public hearing notice.
No, I'm not. Wait a second. No, the tax system's just set up to get people in Austin reelected.
Let me open a joint public hearing for September the 11th, 2017, set for 6:30. Moving in our agenda, public hearing. Councilmember Reed, would you present this for our consideration?
Thank you, Mayor. The second public hearing on the proposed 2017 tax rate for the 2017-2018 budget.
Motion?
Well, it's not a motion, Mayor. Just the staff
That's right. It's not
staff
your
report.
motion. Well, we can still open it that way. Moving in our agenda to staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just in terms of process, this is our second formal public hearing on the tax rate. You'll be asked the next meetings on the 18th and the 25th to actually set the rate. So we've seen the materials a few times starting back early August, and Council's well aware of the range of options and so forth, so it might be appropriate just to see if there's any citizen comments, and then Council can give me consensus direction on how you want us to arrange things for the 18th coming up. So that'd complete what we have for tonight.
That completes your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think that is something that has injected itself in our budget process. And so we've, when we talk about our tax rate, we're looking at what happened to our city and the growth process and the needs we need for that, as well as the damage done by Harvey. And that's going to have to, we're not going to get complete FEMA or other reimbursement on all of the damage that has been done, so we'll have to pick that up through our tax dollars at some point. So I think it's very important how we choose that rate that we'll make a decision on at this point. So with that information in the record, let's move to, after our staff review, we do have an opportunity for citizen comments. Are there any citizens in the audience that would like to make a comment at this point? And hearing none, I don't see a motion in that direction, but hearing none, let's move down to item number 5 on our agenda, which is to let the City Council go through the process, and starting with Councilmember Carbone.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess we start maybe with staff can direct us. I know we've talked through several scenarios, and I think it'd be helpful for staff and for council to if there's any way to come to a consensus tonight. I know there's issues with the legally how many votes it takes to go at or above rollback or above effective. So could staff maybe lay the groundwork on what those different scenarios are, and let's see if we can get to the bottom of where we're going to end up.
Sure. So starting at the top end of the range, council authorized advertising a top rate of 0.7, which would be above the rollback rate. And the revenue that would generate would obviously pay for the 100% of the class compensation's new pay plan starting the beginning of the fiscal year in October, and would also probably be pretty close to neutral on fund balance. The next step below that would be at the rollback rate, which is 0.685 and some change. We traditionally have, well, I shouldn't say, over the last couple of years, we've been pretty close to the rollback. At the rollback, last year we actually exceeded that. The rollback is actually, and that's more detailed in the agenda material for tonight. We sent out some material on that. With that kind of revenue, we would be able, again, to get to the 100% of the class and comp study at mid-year in April of 18. And with some other cuts that we suggested from next year's budget, deferring things and so forth, really recommend that for council's consideration and care. That would actually add about $500,000 with the combination of the revenue and those deferments or cuts, however you want to phrase it, into fund balance. And as the mayor opened up, I really think that's prudent with all the unknowns we've got from future revenue, costs from Harvey. Obviously, we're going to be first in line and doing all the documentation for reimbursements, but there's a fact that it won't be entirely reimbursed. And I outlined in the memo, or Mr. McCarter did, some of the types of things that we're going to have to absorb. So that's at the rollback at the 685, and then right below that would be the 0.680. That's what we originally had recommended, so $0.005 less than the rollback. We would struggle to get to the 100% at that time, and I fear it would set us up for a lot of constraints trying to absorb the full year of 100% in future years without, it's just it's a $500,000 extra revenue between the 6.8 and the 6.85. But we're doing everything we can to try to get that pay plan locked in and into place. And the 6.8 would just, it's doable, but I think it would really put us in, I don't want to say precarious, but tough spot for future budgets. And then, the one below that is the effective rate. And I think, as you alluded to, Member Carbone, if we can't get the required votes for adopting a rate, that's the rate that the state says we would have to default to. And that, going back to the original budget material, even before Harvey, that would mean 1% COLA costs for employees, nothing on the class and comp study, and just a lot of pretty tough situations for the community, I believe, and the city. So really what we framed up was the 680 as originally suggested, and then 685 at the rollback rate with our recommendation for the 685. But and appreciate the setup. If we can get any kind of polling or consensus of the council, will make us more accurate, I think, when we set up the actual considerations for next Monday, the 18th.
Okay.
Okay, that information in the record. Let's start going down through the council, starting with Tony.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Carbone.
I guess the question at the 685, that's going to be in the memo. That's going to be referred to as scenario 3. So there's a few cuts. Well, there's an increase of a half penny over the original budget, and then we're cutting a few vehicles and delaying a police officer. And the combination of those two are going to leave us, what, an extra $500K?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that, well, I'm a fan of, I guess to give my opinion, I'm a fan of the 680. I think in these circumstances, I think I'm going to have to give up and go to the 685, go to the rollback rate. I guess the only question or continuing issue in my mind is, are there any other cuts that we want to see to get this general fund boosted up to help cover for some of the Harvey law or the Harvey catastrophe kind of unexpected costs coming forward? I don't want to just necessarily raise the rate and then go ahead and budget and spend all the money, knowing that we're going to have some unbudgeted items coming through. But for tonight's discussion, I think I can somehow get comfortable going to the rollback rate.
Member Carbone, if I could interject, I appreciate the sentiment about the the unknowns, and if we could, maybe we could come with some suggestions about items. And this member Owens mentioned this earlier. What we would hold back, I guess, on committing through the year until we have a better idea about some of those costs and revenues, et cetera. Over and above maybe anything else that you wanted to ask for cuts in the next year, but I'd suggest we come back to you and say, hey, we're not going to award or check these until we have some better certainty about the uncovered costs from Harvey and how the rest of the revenues are coming in.
All right.
Okay, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would be okay with going to scenario number 3, the 0.685. One cost from Hurricane Harvey that I have not heard was the all of the costs that we incurred in overtime hours for people working. City staff, I mean, y'all were 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, operation. So that's some cost that I have not heard brought up, and I know that's probably a pretty heavy cost. So that would, with that in mind, I mean, I would be okay with going to the scenario number 3.
Okay. Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. My preference would be going to scenario, I believe it was 4 or 5, basically, even as far up as the 0.7. However, I'm comfortable with scenario 3. Councilmember Moore just mentioned something that was pretty key, and I didn't think about it before, is the overtime. And so there probably, if there are other areas, maybe even maybe 1 or 2 areas that we can potentially cut in order to compensate for what we've gone through over the past few weeks, and maybe we should also look at that in addition to scenario 3. But overall, I'm comfortable with scenario 3.
Councilmember Ordino.
I guess I'm gonna have to be comfortable with scenario 3. When you look at the votes that are going to be required, so I'll leave it at that.
That finished. Councilmember Little.
Likewise, I'm comfortable with scenario 3. Originally, I was on board with 7.0 just to get us to 100% of the compensation at mid-year, but with the additional cuts, we're getting there and accomplishing the same thing. So I'm good with scenario 3.
Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, like Councilmember Ordino said, in order to be able to get to the 60% threshold, it looks like scenario 3 is going to be where we are. I think I was very adamant in the last meeting. I thought we had discussed before it going to 680. I was comfortable with that. We don't quite know yet what the impacts of Harvey are. We know what they're going to be. I appreciate the plan to be preemptive about it, but I also want to be responsible with the dollars of the taxpayers who are going to have to be shouldering this cost and the scenario that they're in. And some of these people just may not have homes to go back to. And bumping up their bill is just not, before we can actually identify the additional costs, it's just not my favorite thing to do. if we're going to go to the rollback rate at the 68506, again, if one of the components for justifying the increase in the rate is making sure that we're better prepared for Harvey and its unknown costs, I would say that we go to the 68506 once we already had some feedback from staff that we can live without the 4 additional PD vehicles for this year. We can live without the fire department onboarding. That's $428,000 right there that we could excise from the budget and have that available. I mean, there was a scenario we were comfortable with living with it if the purpose is to make sure that we have enough funds available to deal with this emergency. I don't know if the 4 vehicles and the onboarding is not something that we can't push off. So to the 2 fellow council members who said, what can we cut? I think immediately those are 2 things that we can cut and have nearly $500,000 ready for any Harvey emergency relief funding that needs to come up. I'll vote for the 68506 because I think that's what we need to do in order to continue. But I do wish that we were still at the 680 that we originally talked about before Harvey.
Okay.
Councilman Owens.
Yes, sir. I will probably go for the 685, but I'm just saying that we need to be cautious on the money and how we spend it in here. And you know, I think you answered some of my questions earlier about people coming in and getting adjustment in their housing and stuff like that on the evaluation, and they're not going to be able to do that. But I think on some of the other, you know, we talked about last time, people leaving out with one trash bag, and I'm not too sure that we're going to be able to get our money in the way that we're really looking at it to come in. I don't think it's going to be coming in that way, the revenue, because I think a lot of people have going to have more pressing things than paying their taxes right now, trying to get their lives back together and what have you. So I would say in the beginning on this, whatever we approve on this budget and 685 going after it, I think that what we really need to do is to be cautious on how we're spending our money right now, just in case some of these other things don't occur the way that we think on the budget. So I think that's one of the biggest things. And guys that I know very well said something smarter than I would think about saying, but he said any time's a good time to stop a bad deal. And so I think that's how we need to handle this as we go through, is approve it and as the funds coming in and not overexpend ourselves. And I think from looking at the information we have in 2019, I think you had on the budget part of going up to 73, I guess it was, on there. So I just say cautious on it, and a lot of the stuff that we're looking at now are going to be reoccurring expenses, which will hit us full force in the next budget in 19. So I would just be very cautious how we spend our money. But given that, then I would go with 685 to get us a little bit of boost through it. So you got your vote. Okay. Does staff have any wrap-up comments on this point?
No, sir, it's very helpful and appreciate that. And believe me, we're on board. We understand this is, very, there's uncertainties, and we're going to keep an eye on that. And as I mentioned on Friday, we're going to get the next payroll in Wednesday numbers, and so that's going to show us that. Then we'll be able to figure out, what's getting reimbursed over the next weeks, and it's just something we're going to have to all keep an eye on and report back to you. And as we go forward, use caution, as was said several times.
I think our city council made a wise decision. When we talk about tax dollars, we have to be kind of careful how we evaluate the numbers that we put out, but I think at this point in time, I would not have been too unhappy with 70 cents, but I think this is a wise decision, a mature decision on the part of the council. So with that information in the record,
We do have a motion second on the floor. We don't have one yet, but we need the public to look one.
No, we're good. We're going to make up materials based on the 685 for Monday.
Okay, good. Okay. Is it ready to go through that? Moving down to item number 6, let me adjourn this public hearing at 6:51. I'll ask the Planning Commission to move up into position for the public safety.
Yeah, my great grandson and my oldest, the youngest stepson, granddaughter, were in Sarasota. And he called us and he said, I don't think it was that bad. And I heard my great grandson said, she looked so great. I said, that's the best way to handle it. But you say that.
You'll read it tomorrow. You'll read it tomorrow. Good.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have 6 standalone docket public hearings between the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council of the City of Pearland before us tonight. So I thought we ought to get started before midnight. And if you do plan to speak, be sure that you have filled out this form, and would you hold up and give it to this secretary who can record it. We have this being a legal process. We need to make sure that our records show that we have these in our possession, and we do list them in our minutes. So if that information in the record, let me ask staff to give us some guidance on the process tonight and the items that we will be discussing.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. For tonight's joint public hearing, we have 6 cases, 4 conditional use permits, and 2 zone change requests. The first one is number 14 off of Business Center Drive. The second is number 15 at 9603 Broadway Street. The third is 6601 Broadway Street. The fourth is number 18. It's for the Community of Faith Church at Pearland Parkway. The fifth is starting in our zone changes. It's number 16, zone 16 for 2409 and 2421 Max Road. And then the last one is number 17 at 6518 Rice Road. And everyone can hear me, right? We're all good? All right.
This room does eat up the sound pretty fast.
I'll try to speak up.
Thank you.
All right. With each public hearing, there will be a call to order followed by a staff report. Then the applicant has an opportunity to present public comments in either support or opposition. Please come forward to the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record. Be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame, and make sure that you complete a speaker's card and give it to our recording secretary on the left-hand side of the room. Then there will be council, commission, and staff discussion, followed by an adjournment for each item. After tonight's hearing, the Planning and Zoning Commission will hold their regular meeting. At that point, they will have a vote On the recommendation, speaking at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is at the P&Z's discretion. Council meeting dates for the first and second consideration of all of these items will be October 9th and October 23rd.
That completes your report?
Yes, sir.
Good. Let me add a couple items to that. This is not a decision-making process at this point. This is an opportunity for both the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council to hear the same testimony that you will be presenting, and we will be receiving and sharing with you tonight. And at one point, these will eventually be coming before the City Council, and then at that point, we'll have then some decision-making process at that point. But the other thing is, just remember that if you have questions to ask, that would come up under item number 2 on our agenda. Go ahead and ask the question, but we can't dialogue with you at that point. But we can have one of the planning commissioners or one of the city council members raise that question in your behalf. That way, we can then address the issue at that point. So, I will open each one of these public hearings with a gavel, and at the end, I will adjourn it with a gavel as well. So let me start this off with a gavel for the request for a CUP 17-2000-00014, and I'll ask the chairman of the Planning Commission to read into the record the purpose of the hearing tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request of Kerry R. Gilbert and Associates, represented by Jennifer Curtis, applicant on behalf of Global XYZ Development LLC, represented by Archana Thoda, owner, for approval of an amendment to the site plan for ordinance number CUP 2014-09 in the Business Park BP 288, BP 288 zoning district on approximately 3.0679 acres of land. This is approximately 1,600 feet north of County Road 59 on the west side of Business Center Drive. Thank you, Mayor.
For that information on record, let's move down to item number 1 on our agenda, which is application information case summary. Item 1A is staff report.
All right. Yes, sir. So this is an amendment to a previously approved conditional use permit to amend the site plan. Alterations come up not as frequently as you'd think once the CUP comes through, but occasionally we do have them. And any alterations to the site plan requires conditional use permit approval. The back half of the property was developed with a skilled nursing facility, which was part of the 2014 conditional use permit approval. What's before you tonight is the 2 out parcels of the larger tract. This is an aerial map showing the general location of the subject property. This is the zoning map showing that the property is zoned BP 288. It has some R2 property to the rear across the drainage, and then Costco to the south, and other BP 288 properties to the north and east. The whole thing is within the 288 gateway for the future land use plan. And this is the what was supplied for the site plan for the properties. This is a view looking north. This is a view looking east. This is a view looking south. And this is a view looking west into the property, and you can see the skilled nursing facility that's being developed. Staff has not received any return notices in support or opposition, and there were 2 phone calls that came in and wanted to know some more information about the request. Generally, this meets all of the code and conformance, as you can see in the table. The proposed change meets the 288 gateway for the future land use plan. It conforms with the thoroughfare It also meets the standards of the BP 288 district. Property's already platted with the out parcels, and then it has access to city utilities. This is a reminder of the criteria for a conditional use permit. Staff recommends approval with conditions of the request to conditional use permit for the property. Proposed amendments are consistent with policies of the 288 Gateway. It also meets the general purpose of the 288 zoning district. The conditions involve adding or bringing the landscaping into compliance with what would be required in the BP 288 zoning district, adding some pedestrian access, and then also making sure that that landscaping is outside of the utility easements. And those were discussed in the additional comments within the staff report. Following the amendment would also not generate excess pedestrian or vehicular traffic. One of the ways that they've gone about this is by reducing conflict points. So they have a shared driveway with Costco property. And it's number 6, the amendment incorporates effects that would minimize visual impacts, such as moving the dumpster to the rear of the property and providing screening around it. And then number 7, the amendment would meet all of the BP 288 zoning district. This completes staff's report.
Good. That information in the record. Let's move down to 3B, or 1B, applicant presentation. If the applicant is here. And thank you for being here tonight.
Sure. Hold on. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
That was built for a basketball player.
I'm not a basketball player. All right. Good evening, Mayor, council members, commissioners.
You could probably lower that if you'd like. I think it comes down a little bit.
There we go. Much better.
Okay, that's better, isn't it?
All right.
Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Curtis with BGE Kerry Gilbert Associates. I'm the applicant representing the developer for this property. I'll give you a brief presentation because Martin pretty much covered everything, so I'll just speed through it and stop me if you have questions. Okay, here's the site, obviously south of Broadway Street and west of 288. The red outline is the parent tract, and you can see it is all inside BP 288. The nursing home only took up a portion of the parent tract, and so the parcels in the front were not part of the nursing home development and did not require any CUP at that time. The CUP in 2014 was only for the nursing facility. So these parcels in the front are what we're talking about tonight. This is the site plan that was approved in 2014. And after approval in 2015, the property was platted in conformance with that site plan. And we are looking at just these two pieces in the front. Now, the site plan at that time was only a speculative drawing, and so the developer needs to update the site plan to reflect a more realistic development. So this is what has been proposed. And we did receive some comments from the DRC, and we are able to address those comments, and we have that ready tonight and we can give to staff. A comparison of the two parcels, or the two properties before and after. And that's the end. So any questions?
Good. This being a legal requirement as a document public hearing by state law, we need for you to fill out one of these forms so we have this on record, and I don't think you have filled one out.
I will.
If you would fill one out and give it to the secretary over there with her hand up in the air,
Aye.
that would suffice at this point.
Yes,
so,
sir.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your presentation. Thank you. That information in the record. Let's move on to staff wrap-up comments. Do you have any wrap-up at this point? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then let's move down to item 2 on our collective agendas, which is let people who would like to speak in support of or in opposition to this particular request be sure you fill out one of these forms, preferably before you start. But if you have one at this point, please come up to the podium and we'll have your comments as a citizen to comment on that. I don't see anybody coming up. Well, Renee West, are you coming up? Okay, not on this one. Okay. All right. Since we have no one speaking for the citizens to be heard, let's move down to item 3, which should let the city council come online with comments as appropriate. Starting with Councilmember Owens at this point.
I really don't have no comment as long as we're not putting a liquor store in there.
Okay, Councilmember Perez. Okay, Councilmember Little. Oh,
no.
I'm sorry, you hadn't
Yeah,
started yet.
I hadn't done it. Thank you, Mayor. If I could borrow the applicant's representative for a second, I just have a couple of questions and clarifications.
Yes, sir.
So my understanding, as far as what is allowed in BP 288, we're not proposing any uses at this point that are not allowed outright in that zone, correct?
No, sir. The request is not related to the use, only to the site plan.
So the only reason that we're doing this modification of the CUP is because in the past, we locked in a site plan that we're now forcing them to go through a CUP application or a change in the CUP in order for them to make any adjustment to that site plan. That's the whole reason why they're having to go through this process.
That's correct.
Okay. So I think while I'm asking questions I already knew the answer to, I'm doing it in the public hearing for a purpose. It's like this is exactly why we needed the changes to the CUP that we proposed, because there's absolutely no reason why this needs to go through a CUP. It never should have been put in this position where the front end of the site or the use of the back end of the site makes some conditions on the front end of the site, just the use. If it wasn't a PD, but we're treating it like a PD, and there has been a long delay in this project to do something that was allowed by right, except for behind it they wanted some sort of medical use. And I just think that this goes to, in my opinion, shine a light onto why the CUP process needs to be changed, and why I think the necessities of the changes that we were proposing are going to add a lot of value to the development community in Pearland. With respect to the site, I think it's a good site. I think it's going to be a good development for that area. Do you have? Are there any build-outs proposed in it as of yet? Or are this just going to be the shell space for right now?
The developer is here. He can answer that question.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, you know what? I can save you the opportunity. Are we going to have to go through a CUP for all of the additional uses, so long as they're not conditional, a conditional use for the 288?
No, the BP 288 has a fairly broad range of uses that are allowed for build-out of that site.
So we're going to feel comfortable at this point, once the CUP is changed. To be honest with you, what I would prefer us do, rather than locking them into another subsequent site plan that they would have to, if they ever have to make a modification to either expand or make any relatively minor change to that site, they'd have to go through another CUP process. We clear out the site plan and just allow that area to develop in conformance with whatever is allowed per the UDC in that zone. I just don't see the need or the purpose or the value in requiring a site plan to be a condition of the back end use, and this thing's forever locked into these odd conditional use updates every time that they need to do a modification. If they sell and flip the land, and the landowner wants to combine the buildings, and that doesn't conform with the site plan we moved tonight, at that point we would have to do another conditional use update, correct?
Correct.
So I would much rather us, rather than locking them into a site plan that they're comfortable with now, but may, in the future as they're developing this, maybe they find that site plan is not necessarily going to work, or they get an end user that says, hey, we're going to take up all this space, but we need to move this wall out 20 other feet, or we need some additional parking, or some other change to the site plan. They're going to be back in limbo with having to do another conditional use permit change or update, I think it's more valuable for us to, and better for the developer and better for the city as far as our staff time and the value that we're getting out of this exercise, to wipe out all of the site conditions on the front end and allow it to develop as the UDC would allow it to develop had it not been for the conditional use on the back end. That really would be the direction I would like to see us go. So I really just don't want to have to put people through these, frankly, these unnecessary exercises. I know, and I sound like I'm harping on staff, and I apologize. I know that y'all are doing what is required of you because of what was written in the ordinance when this was originally done. I think I would be harping on why this was originally done this way, why we had the front end site conditions for the back end use, just the use. Again, it's just taking these CUPs and making them into PDs, misusing the tool, in my opinion. Also, for transparency purposes, I'd like to note that though the owner is not a client of mine, they are related to a project that I've worked on. I've talked with staff to make sure that there's no ethical conflicts, and there are not. So I'm not required to recuse myself from the vote. That really don't have a connection that would either require it. So I just want, for the purposes of transparency, I wanted to make sure that that's noted and for the public record. And that's all I have to say, Mayor.
Councilman Little?
No comment, Mayor.
Councilman Ord, no?
Wasn't going to have a comment, but I do want to add, this is why I don't want any site plan, hand-drawn or otherwise, in a CUP process, because I fear we're going to be back to this in 10 years.
Okay. Councilmember Moore?
Have no comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Carbone?
To follow up on Councilman Perez's speech, what's the best way, I guess a question for staff, can we remove the site plan altogether? Does that make sense with what's going on here, or does it make sense to move forward as proposed?
I think the original intent, of course, I was not here in 2014, but it seems to me that the back end of the site plan and the front end of the site plan were to create a whole concise development, so that way they felt similar to one another. If we remove the out parcels, then you have kind of a hodgepodge of development. If that's the way that we want to go about it, to remove the work that's been done, so that way, we've got some design details in the front that were in that first site plan. Can you go back to the comparison between the two? We worked with them to keep that middle design feature with the walkway across, to try and keep some semblance of the previous intent. If we want to take away the site plan, then that's the decision that's made. Otherwise, I think we've worked with them to ensure that this has appropriate parking, that it meets the general retail or office uses that they're proposing to put in, which are likely to be future uses that develop there. It's all kind of dependent on how this discussion goes.
Yeah, wake up. So is the applicant okay with leaving the site plan in? The applicant's representative is going to get paid more if you have to come back. So
We're prepared to do whatever council would like.
okay, all right. Well, I'm fine with it as is tonight, but I do agree with Councilman Perez and the changes that are proposed to the CUP process. I think it'll help resolve some of this in the future. That's all my comments, Mayor.
Is there a way I can follow with legal as far as, can we provide language in the way the ordinance is written to give them some wiggle room for modifications of the site plan? If it's council's will to leave the site plan as part of this, really, I don't, to be frank with you, these guys wouldn't come in and addressed any of these comments if it wasn't for having to do that as part of the conditional use permit. They wouldn't have volunteered any of these things. And we have the UDC for a reason. They will develop in accordance with something that we believe is valuable for the city of Pearland. They're not volunteering this. They're being required to because of the CUP conditions. If we do, and I still am vehemently opposed to us putting a site plan condition on this CUP amendment, but if we do, is there language where we can loosen it up to where they don't have to, if they have to combine two of these buildings to satisfy a potential tenant, if they want to make some modifications to the landscaping, the parking configuration, where they're planting trees, there's not an interpretation where staff can say, but you have to do a CUP amendment to do that.
Council always has the ability to put into an ordinance something of that nature. However, the difficulty you run into, especially on the fly like this, is trying to define the parameters of what staff's authority is. And it places staff in sometimes a difficult predicament trying to figure out, are we going too far? Or are we not going far enough? And so to answer your question is yes. My only concern is trying to do that here this evening with an amendment tonight is trying to define what that would be. I just don't feel confident that we would get there this evening trying to determine what that would be.
I would go back to my original proposal. I think the cleanest thing to do for everybody and prevent unnecessary staff time in the future is to wipe the site plan conditions off of the CUP and allow them to develop in accordance with the UDC. There's no requirement in the UDC that two separate parcels have to have a site plan that directly correlates with each other. Those were conditions that were added, and now we're sustaining that addition for reasons that are wholly elective. And I personally just don't feel like we're using that tool appropriately. So I would propose that we just wipe the site plan conditions off of the CUP and just have them develop in accordance with the UDC.
One thing to keep in mind is that if they were to combine the buildings together, those are two separately platted lots right now. So there is a building setback line between each of those buildings for a side setback. So there would be some additional steps involved from taking what exists today to a potential different site plan.
No, but
just as further information.
No, and I appreciate that. You can't have a building across the platted line. They would know that, and that's predictable. But what if they want to split the south parcel into two separate buildings? Because that's essentially what they're doing from 14 to now is they're combining two buildings. If they decide that they want to go back and split it, they have to go through that. Putting a building over a lot line is a hard condition in development that most people in development understand. Mm-hmm. But having to go through a CUP for what staff can interpret as any change to a site plan that was imposed by this ordinance, which is frankly up to y'all's subjectivity. I think y'all are doing the best you have with the ordinance that we all were given, and I commend you for working with these guys. I know we've had some hiccups along the way. I think your hands have been tied. I want to untie them. I want us to allow people to develop in accordance with the Unified Development Code, as opposed to continuing to put people through these unpredictable landmines where they have to go through months-long periods to do something that was wholly unpredictable and delay and risk projects and potentially lose funding. Development is just, it's not a patient process. It probably should be, but it's not. I'm confident that they probably they had a risk of losing funding for this project because it wasn't moving fast enough. So if I can untie your hands, prevent y'all from having to go through this exercise in the future, frankly wasting your time, wasting their time, not providing significant amount of value to the development of this tract, I think that's the way to go.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I just actually pulled up the language for the conditional use approval process that will be actually coming before council on September 18th, the first reading. And the conditions do state that deviations from the site plan, the approved site plan, will be allowed under the new CUP approval process, just as long as those
the site plan deviation doesn't conflict with modifications or conditions that were set by council. So there is some wiggle room to deviate from the site plan that's submitted in the language that we are proposing that will be heard from you guys next week.
And I do believe that's, as long as it doesn't conflict with any additional conditions the council would place beyond what was on that site plan.
Okay. Council have any further comment or question at this point? Since this is the first of 6 of these standalone docket public hearings, there has been a lot of dialogue, but no decision-making will take place during this particular phase. It will be, the decision-making process will be when it goes to the Planning Commission for their decision, and then eventually comes to City Council for our decision. And at that point, so we're trying to work out and clarify and receive as much testimony as we can to clarify and make certain we get the right process and to build the right facility. So I thank you for your input on this. I like the idea of the facility. I think it's a good location for it. I think we can work out these details at this point. So with that information in the record, let me kick this over to our chairman of our planning commission for comments from the planning and zoning.
The only comment I have is the reason that the 2 parcels in the front have anything to do with the parcels in the back is because when it was brought to us the first time, there was only one property. They split the property up as part of the CUP process. That's why they were trying to get some kind of cohesion, because originally it was only one property when we saw it the first time. That being said, I agree with, of course, the new changes to the CUP process and don't really have any comments on this specific property.
I guess the only comment I have is again, if you're going to remove all the pieces of the CUP process, I would totally support changing the zoning on properties to remove the CUP if that's the directive of council. I mean, there's a lot of these properties, there's a lot of these district zones that we could do away with a lot of the process if we just want to open that up and say do whatever on that property. But for some reason, this is BP 288. It had different restrictions put on it, and we've been following that process. So I don't have anything to add to what staff said, and I support this. Thank you. We're finished, Mayor.
Okay. Yes, Member Ordino, you've already spoken about this at this point. Yeah. And Councilmember, you've already spoken, and I think Councilmember Carbone has shared his thoughts. Does staff have any wrap-up comments at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have an item 4 on our collective agenda, which says adjournment, which I shall do at 7:30. And in a like manner, I will open a standalone docket public hearing for zone change CUP 17-00014, and ask the chairman of the planning commission read into the record the purpose of this hearing tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. CUP 17-0015. This is a request of Gilbert Mandke PLLC, applicant on behalf of AVK Properties LLC, represented by Kannimel O, Mathew, owner, on approval of a conditional use permit CUP to allow for a liquor package store in the general business GB zoning district on approximately 3.1312 acres of land. This is at 9603 Broadway Street.
Mm-hmm. And if the record said I said 14, I really meant 15. That information in the record. Let's move down to application information case summary. A is the staff report.
Yes, sir. All right, this is a conditional use permit for approval of a liquor package store. The property was developed in 2007 as a shopping center with 2 buildings. There is 1 approved store within a 2-mile radius. And then there's a store just outside of that 2-mile radius that you'll see on the buffer map here in a minute. There are no exterior modifications proposed, only interior build-out. This is the site plan showing the property, or aerial map showing the property. This is the zoning map showing general business. And then this is the future land use plan map showing retail, offices, and services for the property. Again, this is the buffer map showing the one approved, which is the liquor store at the Costco site. And then the one that is just outside of the 2-mile radius is the one that is at the Kroger there at Shadow Creek Parkway. This is the site plan provided for the property. This is a view to the north looking into the property. This is a view looking east along Broadway. This is a view looking south. This is a view looking west. Staff has not received any return notices or phone calls in either support or opposition to the proposed conditional use permit request. Again, this one generally meets all of our conformity table with the comprehensive plan for the future land use designation with retail offices and services. Broadway, the property is out on Broadway, which is a major thoroughfare. It meets the standards of the general business zoning district. The property is already platted, and it has access to city water and sewer facilities. Staff recommends approval of the requested conditional use permit. Just one thing before I jump into the recommendation. We are planning on having a meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission in early October to discuss some of the research that we've conducted for packaged liquor stores. Harvey kind of threw us out of the way with getting all that finalized, so that's why we don't have it tonight, but we will have it for future discussion. So on with the recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the packaged liquor store on the 3.1312 acre site. It meets the comprehensive plan for retail offices and services. It's generally accompanied by other commercial zone properties of similar size and intensity. The proposed use is compatible with other commercial developments. Packaged liquor stores, we don't anticipate to generate additional pedestrian or vehicular traffic. And with that, it's not anticipated to generate extra traffic volumes, which would require additional measures to mitigate those features. And then the proposed use would not incorporate any bars over the windows or additional lighting, which has already been detailed out within the definition of use. And then the liquor store would meet the general standards of the general business zoning district. This completes staff's report.
That completes your report. Let's move to B, item B, which is applicant presentation. Is the applicant here tonight? Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Reed.
Be sure and introduce yourself.
My name is Robert Gilbert. I represent AVK Properties Incorporated, the owner of the shopping centers.
Super.
I really have nothing to add to the staff report other than to say that the shopping center is a good commercial general use shopping center. It has a good mix of small businesses and franchises. The owner is looking to expand the diversity of the property and wishes to take advantage of the fact that there is a vacancy in the property to go ahead and pursue this conditional use permit. I'm certainly happy to take any questions that the council might have. But I have nothing to add to the staff.
Okay, good. I appreciate it. You may be asked questions later, so we'll thank you so much. Moving to item C, staff wrap-up comments.
No, sir.
No wrap-up at this point. Let's move down to item number 2, which would allow citizens who would love to do so would like to speak. This is your opportunity to do so. I would ask that you have completed one of these forms either before or after you complete your comments. Is there anyone who would like to present a comment at this point? Hearing none. Hearing none, then let's move then to item number 3. To receive comments from our city council, starting with Councilmember Carbone.
No comment this time, Mayor.
Councilmember Moore.
No comment, Mayor.
Councilman Ordno.
No comment.
Councilmember Little.
No comment.
Councilmember Perez.
No comment.
And Councilmember Owens. Were you going to speak?
Yeah. Sure I will. Yeah, I think we ought to take every intersection and make the corners for liquor stores. How many is this? 9? 9 so far that's been approved? Well, yeah, maybe we should take all corners and hold those just for liquor stores on each one of them. As you know, I'm not a fan of that. It's just too many of them going in right now. There's nothing on our planning and zoning to look at the number that we should have in here, whatever, or how to turn them down. I think, you know, we go from the ones that we had on the outside of the population, and probably with the 9 that's been approved so far, and you talk about the Friendswood area and the Houston area, which is backed up to our property here for the city of Pearland, we've probably got about 15 liquor stores. I mean, you know, this one would be certainly, be in walking distance of a lot of people, so they can come over and buy and walk back home, I guess. But no, I'm not a big fan of these, and I think that we need to do something, sit down and talk about it. All of these are coming in, and the people that are putting them in are all out of Houston area that's putting them in here, with the exception of a couple, I think. But I'll just go on record again and again that I'm not happy with it. I'd never vote for it. Only I think we've got enough of them in here, so that's all I've got to say.
Okay. That completes the council remarks. Mr. Chairman.
Well, I agree with Councilman Owens. I think that we got way too many of them going in, but I think that if we're getting this workshop to get together with staff, I might change my mind after that. But if they can convince me that you know that we don't have them all huddled together, we need to come up with some type of process that says that we have them and we're in, because the public did vote them in, and it was during a presidential election, so we had something like 37,000 people voting at that time. So that's and it passed like by 60%. So you know, we're supposed to be representing the citizens when we come to these conclusions or come to these decisions. The only thing is that my concern is the same as Councilman Owens. It's just they're just too close together. They're just all piled up in an area. So, you know, if we can sit there and have a workshop and they can sit there and show us what the norm is on this type of stuff, then maybe later on I'll change my mind. But right now, until we have that workshop, I'm not voting for any of them.
Mr. Chairman.
I had one question for the applicant or staff. I guess I can ask staff first. Is the applicant wanting to open a liquor store themselves, or is this a third-party request?
It's himself. It's the AVK Properties Inc. will be the owner of the liquor store.
Okay, so on our other liquor stores, we were at least presented with some type of graphic or presentation of what the store was going to have. So I guess without any further details of what's going to be installed, there's really nothing to review, to add a condition to or to review. This is just an approval for a liquor store, and I think there was some verbiage in there about selling lottery tickets as well. Not that it matters. But for the simple fact that we have a conditional use permit and we don't know anything other than it's going to be a liquor store, my vote will be no. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
That completes your complete all
Mayor,
your.
can I?
Yes, please.
So Daniel, I hear you. I'm kind of like 6-10 split on it. I feel the CUP enables us to say should there be a liquor store there, but I do believe to some extent we have to trust that the UDC that's in place will take everything forward from there. And I think if we start getting, and so from what I've seen in the year that I've been on this committee, it's okay. Something requires a CUP, so then we tend to take a very liberal approach about what we can now demand that the developer do with it. And I'm not. Sometimes I think it's fair. Sometimes I think it's not. And the sense I get, and this goes to what Darrell was saying before, the sense I get from both our committee and council joined together is that I'm not sure if we're in a place where we're saying let the market dictate what should happen versus how we want to craft our city. So I'm not actually convinced that as a body we actually know who we're trying to be yet. And I think it puts us in a difficult situation. We're trying to come up with the rules of how it's supposed to work. So I don't think I've necessarily landed on anything, but I don't think for this, I don't think I need to see an outline of a storefront in order to approve it.
Mm-hmm. I really think the market will take care of the liability and the whether they will be successful or not. But also, it's just it's interesting that most all of them, with the exception of 2 of them, are on the east side of 288. There are none in west of 288 at this point, so it's kind of an interesting selection of position. So it may be flooding the market on the east side of 288. I don't know, but I think the market will have can be a tough master over these type things.
Well, we make it up in mattress stores.
Yeah, that's right. and unless we get a losing football team and everybody wants to drown out their sorrows. There being no further comments from this except for the staff's report request at this point.
No further comment.
No staff report comments. Okay. With all this information in the record, let me move to item 4 on our collective agendas, which let me adjourn CUP 17-00015 at 7:45, and move to open a standalone docket public hearing for CUP 17-00016. Ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the reason for this.
Yes, Mayor. This is CUP 17-00016, a request of Hoagie USA LLC, applicant owner, represented by Bruce Honore, for approval of a conditional use permit CUP to allow for a truck, heavy, and bus rental or sales use in the general commercial GC zoning district on approximately 3.1092 acres of land. This is at 6601 Broadway Street.
That information in the record. Let's move down to item 1 on our collective agendas, application information, case summary, staff report.
Yes, sir. All right. This is for approval of a truck heavy or bus rental use, which is generally a U-Haul. Property was developed in 2011 with a gas station and a lease space of 1,240 square feet. The property was recently rezoned from general business to general commercial, where the truck, heavy, or bus rental use opens up and is allowed as a conditional use permit. Additional parking is proposed at the rear of the site. This is the aerial map of the subject property. This is the zoning map showing general commercial. This is the future land use plan showing business commercial. And this is the site plan that was provided for the site. And you can see in the darker line towards the top where they're proposing to expand their parking area. And then this is kind of a picture looking one at that side of the building that has the lease space, and then also towards where that parking area would go. This is a view from Broadway looking north into the property. This is a view looking east. This is a view looking south. And this is a view looking west. Staff has received one comment form in opposition of the request. With the code conformance table, it's business commercial, it's on Broadway, so it matches meets the thoroughfare plan, meets the standards of the general commercial zoning district. The property is already platted and it has access to city water and sewer. Staff recommends approval of the conditions of the requested conditional use permit on the lot. The proposed use of the truck heavy or bus rental at the location meets the business commercial category for the future land use plan. The use is consistent with the general commercial zoning district. The proposed use is compatible with and preserves the character of the adjacent development. Staff is recommending some additional landscaping be put around that parking or the new parking area so as to minimize the effects of any headlights or any visual appearance from the parking area. The proposed use wouldn't generate pedestrian or vehicular traffic, which would potentially conflict with existing traffic patterns. The proposed use would not generate extra traffic requiring adjustments to roadways or traffic calming devices. And with the minimal additional screening proposed around the parking area with street trees and a hedgerow, we feel that would adequately buffer the adjacent properties. And then the proposed use meets the standards of the general commercial zoning district. No variations are proposed necessary to render the site compatible. This completes staff's report.
That completes your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. To compensate for the low sound volume, I'd like to ask everybody to talk just a little louder into a microphone. And I think we could let some of the people that are perhaps back at the back hear just a little bit better. So that information in the record. Item B is the staff applicant presentation. Is the applicant here to? Yes, please. The microphone is yours. Please talk into it, maybe so we maybe just a little more
Bruce
power.
Honore.
Yes.
I basically agree with everything he said. I don't have a problem with doing hedges or putting trees around.
I'm not hearing you at all.
You hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
I basically agree with what he said.
It's better.
I can add shrubs or hedges around the new parking in the rear of the property where I plan on putting the 6 new spots. And if I need to add a couple of trees, oak trees or something, I would do that as well. That's all.
Good. I appreciate it. We're kind of playing this telephone ad. Can you hear me now? So that information in the record. Let's move down to item C, which is staff report. Wrap-up comments.
No further comment.
No wrap-ups, okay. And the person to speak. Are there any individuals in the audience who would like to present your comments for our consideration tonight? Are there any any citizens that would like to speak in behalf of either in support of or in opposition to this presentation at this point? Hearing none, and staff wrap-up has been indicated. Moving to item number 3 on our council meeting. I'll ask Councilmember Carbone to kick off with comments.
No comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Moore?
No comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Ordno?
No comment.
Councilmember Little?
No comment.
Councilmember Perez?
No comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Owens?
No comment.
No comments. Kick it over now to... Can you hear me now? All right. That cleans out the earplugs. I think Harvey messed up all of our sound system as well as some of our ditches and roads and creeks. You got it where we're speaking pretty well? Okay. All right. Let me kick this over to our chairman of our planning commission.
So, my big question is, now we have a site plan that is showing additional concrete that looks like it might be going back into their existing detention pond. Doesn't have any radiuses on it. This probably wouldn't make it through engineering as it is. Are we tying this into this CUP? Is my big question. With the new rules, this would probably go through and we have a little bit of leeway to be able to change the site plan to meet engineering's requirements that are going to have to happen. But with our current situation, how is that going to play out? If this one gets approved and then the new rules get established, are they going to be able to have that leeway?
I think that's up to us if we want to attach the site plan to it. Again, you'll know where I stand. I think they've provided an exhibit to show how they'll generally make conformance. It's not an engineered site plan.
Right.
They've not run through the detention cap. If they can't make it work, then they won't get through engineering. They won't get their permit. Doesn't matter what the CUP does. But my opinion is that we exclude the site plan restrictions, put in the language that says they have to meet these qualifications of the hedging and provide those parking spaces in conformance with the UDC and the EDCM. Is how I mean, if it were solely mine to write, that's how I'd write it. I think you and I are on the same page.
Well, on this one, yeah, I think so. That's my comment.
Yeah, I guess my only comment is we're given the site plan to look at. The site plan is really just a quick overlay of a sketch of regular parking spaces. I hear that there's going to be trucks in here, so looking at this it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because the size is all based on cars, and so it's really not worth the paper it's on to tie it to anything. The real question, I believe, here is use, and I really think that when we see diagrams, they're not to be tied specifically, but to show what the applicant's going to do with the property. If we're going to have a conditional use permit, that's something we as a body need to see. What's it going to look like? Because that has an impact on the community. Obviously, somebody didn't like it. They turned in a piece of paper saying they didn't want the use. So big trucks like RVs, I've driven my RV to that gas station. I know what turning radiuses are on those trucks. It's going to be an issue, but if they want to fight that issue, that's fine with me. But I can't see in that corner backing those trucks around without expanding that much larger than parking spots. And I think the written part of the application said that spots 1 through 5 were going to be used for parking trucks, and those are regular sized parking spots sized for cars. So trucks are much longer than that. So again, this paper can't be tied to it in our meeting. A site plan that we don't have really can't be tied to it. So it's really just a vote yes or no on the use. That's all I have.
That completes your report.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you.
Does the staff have any wrap-up comments at this point?
No, sir.
None at this point, okay. Let me move to item 4. I'm sorry.
Can I just add something? I mean, we've seen this before. We saw this as the rezone, so I know there's issues here, but I would hope, I mean, the applicant's been up here too many times already, so I would hope that we can get to some conclusion and get a favorable outcome tonight, whether it's tied to the site plan or not, because if I remember correctly, we gave some good indications back during the rezoning. So I would hope that we can get to the right conclusion tonight, because we've all seen this project before.
Well, I mean, I'm hearing that everybody has no comments, that they want it to be approved. So our input is irrelevant in this. Well, CUPs don't require anything other than a vote. So our comments will be what they are as a body.
Yeah.
Any other comments from council? Or the planning and zoning?
No, Mayor.
Let me move to item 4, which let me adjourn this CUP 17-00016 at 7:58. And in a like manner, let me open a standalone docket public hearing for CUP 17-00018, and ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the legal reason and purpose of this meeting.
This is CUP 17-00018. This is a request of Recca Engineering, represented by Robert A. Marlowe, applicant on behalf of R West Development Company, owner, for approval of conditional use permit CUP to allow for a church building to be located in a single-family R2 zoning district on approximately 2.08 acres of land. This is the south side of Pearland Parkway across from Oak Ridge Drive.
That information in the record. Let's move down to item number 1, application information, case summary, staff report, item A.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. CUP 17-00018, Community of Faith Church. They're requesting a conditional use permit, and it's undeveloped property located east of Town Lake Estates, single-family subdivision along Pearland Parkway, which is in between Euler Drive and Dixie Farm Road along Pearland Parkway. The R2 zoning district encourages primarily residential uses and specific uses that would not have any negative impacts. And this church would not have any negative impacts on the single-family development. And like I said, the proposed development is for a church building for religious services, counseling center, theological, and also educational classes. The surrounding area is single-family residential, and there is a drainage ditch located to the south and east of the subject property. Exhibit 1 is the aerial map, and the subject property is outlined in the red triangular shape. Exhibit 2 shows the zoning map, and Exhibit 3 is the future land use plan map. This is a site plan of the property. And these are some exterior elevation renditions that were submitted by the applicant. This is a view facing north from the property. This is a view facing south. This is the subject property. This is a view east along Pearland Parkway. And this is a view facing west at the subject property along Pearland Parkway. We have received one comment in opposition to the requested conditional use permit. In regards to the code conformance table, it generally meets all of the conformity uses, the comprehensive plan. The use is possibly, because it's medium density residential, future land use plan designation, and a church is allowed as a conditional use permit. Pearland Parkway is a major thoroughfare of sufficient width in that part of Pearland Parkway. It's consistent with the UDC. R2 zoning, again, is allowed as a conditional use permit for this type of use. Platting. This property is currently in the process of being platted, and there are sufficient water and sewer facilities in regards to utilities. Recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the requested CUP for the church building on the approximate 2.08 acre site for the following reasons. Number one, the proposed use of the church building is compatible with and it preserves the character and integrity of adjacent developments in neighborhoods and area. As you all may know, churches are typically located in residential zone areas the majority of times. Number two, the proposed use does not generate pedestrian and vehicular traffic, which would be hazardous or conflict with the existing and anticipated traffic within the neighborhood. Number three, the proposed use does not generate enough traffic to require incorporation of roadway adjustments, traffic control devices, or mechanisms. Number four, the proposed use incorporates features to minimize adverse effects, including visual impacts of the proposed conditional use on adjacent properties. And number five, the proposed use meets the standards for the R2 zoning district. A variation of the screening requirement is proposed to reducing the 25-foot required buffer. Such variation is necessary to render the use compatible on the site and with the adjoining neighborhood. No portion of the building is within that buffer, and the buffer will contain landscape and green space. And this landscape buffer zoning variance will be presented before the ZBA board on September 21st. And the 25-foot landscape buffer will be required, and that is the western portion of the property, the one that abuts directly against a single-family subdivision, and they're requesting a variance at that time for the land south and east of the subject property, and it's just a drainage ditch, so there's no single-family located in that area. And this completes staff reports.
Good, okay. Let's move to item B for the applicant presentation. And thank you for being here tonight, sir.
I'm John English with Recca Engineering and representing the owner. And the track history has been where it's been along Parkway, Pearland Parkway there for a long time, where development has occurred around it. The drainage ditch that and also we appreciate the staff recommendation, we concur with that. But also the drainage ditch that they mentioned is a detention facility. And then from there, it's a lake with the trees. And so we respectfully request approval of this variance, but also the reason for that is also because of the proposed fire lane that would serve the building would also be able to be placed in the proper location.
Good. I appreciate those comments. Thank you, sir. Let's move to item C. Needs staff any wrap-up comments from staff at this point? Sir. Okay. Let's move to item 2 on our agenda, which is there for the purpose of inviting anyone who'd like to make a comment either in support or opposition to this report. Is there any comments from the audience? Thank you. And I saw you turn in your form a little earlier, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Renee McGuire, 1612 Run, Fairland, Texas, West Development. And, well, I think with all the liquor stores we've got coming to Fairland, we're going to need another church to
buy the wine?
counsel. Yeah.
You're not going to sell liquor out the back door, are you?
People that are struggling with alcohol abuse, among other things. But anyway, it goes along with what we're going to hope to do on the 60 acres that we own just south of there. The only thing that butts up against in one area is Town Lake Estates, and there's no entrance and exits to go through the community, so I don't think it'll impede any traffic in the subdivision, or it's far enough across the Pearland Parkway from the other subdivision. There are traffic problems there, and certainly the only thing that'll be facing Pearland Parkway between Dixie Farm and Oiler is actually this piece of property and the 60 acres next door. So. And I think it's going to be a welcome. This particular church that's moving here does a lot of community, just as I do, and involved in community, helping out in the community with people that are struggling, homeless, drug addiction, mental health issues, so on and so forth. I think that it's going to be a real asset to the community to have people that are mobilized and able to care for the older people, the people that are displaced, coming out of storms, and later we're going to try to get a Bridge Tranquility House that will be able to house people that are in transition. That it would be perfect for things like this. So I think it'll fit with what the other things that we're doing in the community. So I'm for it.
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a presentation? Hearing none, then let's move down to item number 3 on our agenda. And I'll start off with Councilmember Owens. Comments?
Mayor, the last time I was on council, I always told everybody that if the Lord won't put a church here, I'd never stand in the way of it. And so that's pretty well in that area there now, so I have no other comment.
That completes your comment?
Yep.
Oh, good. Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of quick questions just for clarification. I assume that the site is already, the detention for the site is already compensated for in the regional for the, is it?
Yes.
What's the subdivision that's adjacent to?
Would you come down to the podium?
Town Lake Estates and then villages of Town Lake. And there's a region. I'm sorry.
Come please step to the podium.
If you would, please.
That way we all hear.
John English. Yes, it's Town Lake Estates and villages of Town Lakes has a regional detention facility, including the lake that Renee referred to, and it has about 30 acre-feet of additional extra capacity at this time, and this site will take 1.3 acre-feet. That's going to be required.
Okay. And the westernmost driveway aligns with the median opening? Northern,
yes.
Northwest. My only request is, I think independent of the use, I think the use is obviously fine for this. I think it's a good complement to the subdivision. I think independent of the site plan, the buffer on the rear property, I think we could add that to the conditional use approval, save the extra step of the variance process. We could just add language that the buffer doesn't need to be applied. It's got plenty of buffer as it is on the south end. Again, I think that's independent of the site plan. They can modify the site plan as they need to, but without the buffer, it's just not adding value to us, and it saves a step. So I would hope that, or I would propose that we approve it with approve the CUP with the buffer reduction or elimination on the south end of the property in place.
No comment, Mayor.
No comment?
No comment.
No comment.
No comment. Mr. Chairman?
No comments, Mayor.
Okay. We move down to item 4, which let me adjourn the standalone public hearing for CUP 17-00018 at 8:12. Moving to open a docketed public hearing for application zone 17-00016. Ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the purpose of this hearing tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request of George Gardner, applicant on behalf of Julia Faye Ross, owner, for approval of a change in zoning from suburban residential 12, SR 12, to a general commercial GC zoning district on approximately 9.874 acres of land. This is 2409 and 2421 Max Road.
Okay, with that information on the record, let's move down to item 1, application information case summary, staff report.
Yes, sir. Right. This is our first zone change for the night. It is zone 17-00016. This is a request of change in zoning from SR 12 to general commercial. The applicant is proposing the development of an RV and boat storage facility with future commercial development along Max Road. We saw this at a plan development workshop earlier this year, and the property was annexed in November of 1997. This is an aerial map of the site. This is the zoning map showing the SR12 zoning. This is the future land use plan map showing low density residential for the site. This is a view looking north. This is a view looking east. This is a view looking south. And this is a view looking west. Staff has not received any return notices or phone calls in either support or opposition of the proposed zone change request. For the comprehensive plan, this doesn't meet the low density residential category, being a commercial use and a commercial zoning district. Max Road is a major thoroughfare to be widened. The Unified Development Code currently has those 2 lots. There's a residence on each one of the lots. So it would be in conformance with the SR12, and it would, by changing the zoning, those would be considered existing non-conforming structures. The property would need to be platted, and it does not have access to city water, sanitary sewer at this time. Again, as we did with the introduction for the first one, this is the criteria for a zone change. Staff does not recommend approval of the requested change in zoning for the 9.874 acre site. It does not meet the policies of the comprehensive plan for the low density residential land use classification. The commercial nature of the uses, which are in general commercial, which is one of the heavier zoning categories, wouldn't be appropriate to juxtapose with the existing low-density residential that is surrounding. And then the general commercial would not be in accord with the proposed plans for the area, and the residential nature of the area would not be conducive to commercial properties. This completes staff's report.
Okay. Let's move down to item B, which is applicant's presentation. Is the applicant here? Oh, thank you. I thought I saw you back there. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Give us your name and address and we'll crank it up.
I'm George Gartner, owner of Gartner Coatings, and I'm the one that proposing to buy this property and develop it. So let me just say that the negative comments that are up here, this is like the first time I've seen anything like this. We started this back in the spring. Probably had at least 3 pre-development meetings. That resulted in staff wanting us to do a PD. We went out, hired somebody to help us do the PD, made the presentation a month or so ago. And then from recommendation from one of the council members, rather than pursue a PD, it was recommended that we pursue a zone change. And to me, that made a lot of sense. And so that's what we're here tonight doing. But listen, I'm a business guy here in Pearland. I have 50 employees. The last thing I'd want to do is do something that was detrimental to Pearland. And I don't want to have to fight with the city council to try to do something. I have a lot better things to do with my money than do this. Anyway, I just want to make a few comments before I leave. Number one being, I just saw these last Friday and tried to figure out how to address these things. One person told me I ought to drive around where this proposed thing is going in, shoot a bunch of pictures and bring them to y'all. And I did, but I'm not going to bore you with them. But I will tell you that there are some nice businesses located around me. It's not all residential. And some of the residential is not the kind of residential you want anyway. So it's a very mixed use area. And lastly, I just want to close with, if this is what the staff's intentions were, if you'd have told me this back in January or February, I wouldn't have had to pursue this. I could have left it alone and moved on to something else. Instead, I've spent many untold hours, spent lots of money hiring people to get to this point, and now it looks like it's going to be turned down. I'm okay with that. I'm okay. But I am voicing a little, or complaining a little bit about how this was handled. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I appreciate those comments. Thank you, sir. That information in the record. Let's move to item C. Let staff have any wrap-up comments at this point?
No wrap-up comments.
No wrap-up comments. Okay. Item 2 on our agenda, persons wishing to speak for or against the proposed request. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to enter into the record? I see one coming up. And he's going to fill out a form when he gets through talking. That'll work. Thank you for being here.
Rod Nicholson. Rod Nicholson is my name.
Good.
I'm a neighbor.
Well, introduce yourself for the record.
Rod
Name and
Nicholson.
address.
I'm a neighbor, and I'm quite happy to
I
see
know you're a
change.
neighbor, but who are you?
Rod Nicholson.
And your address.
Oh, I live in Seabrook, but I have property in Pearland, right next door to the proposed.
Do you have a home address?
Yes.
Why don't you tell me your name and your home address?
Okay, 1719 West Hedgecroft.
That's what I want. Now
Seabrook.
you hook 'em along.
And we survived the flood. No, I'm very much. I would very much like to add a positive comment for what he's proposing. I think it would enhance our area. If you look at Max Road, we have on one side we have residential. On the other, we do have mixed but there's some businesses that are very viable that add to their, I think, the community here. And the idea of storage, I've had a friend propose that to me before. Not that I've pursued it, but I'm in support of this gentleman's proposal. I think it would be helpful. I know that Houston and Pearland and other areas are short on storage, viable storage. And I am very much aware of the water situation, but that would, I think, be addressed with engineering and whatnot. So I just want to lend my support to what his proposal is.
Oh, good. I appreciate those comments. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to enter into the record?
Yes, Mayor.
I see a hand up there. There he comes, hooking around there. Got him a form to fill out when he finishes. Thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening. My name is Young, and I'm the neighbor, actually on the other side of the road, on Roy Road, and I'm here to support George's application. And the couple of things I want to point out is, which is that in Roy Road and Max Road, there's quite a lot of business around in that area. So it is actually quite a mixed-use area. And I believe that if that area being developed, there would be a lot of business that can be brought to Parent. So I'm here to support the application.
Good.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to enter into the record or comment with the form? I don't see any movement out there in that direction. Let's move down to item number 3 on our agenda. And I'll start off by asking the council member Carbone if he will share some ideas with us.
Thank you, Mayor. We saw this in the PD workshop. I'm glad to see it back as a straight zone change. I think it makes sense. I understand staff's recommendation or recommendation for denial. I guess to Mr. Gardner, that's staff's job. I think it doesn't quite fit in the box, but I think as we heard during the PD workshop, I think this rezoning makes sense, and I expect it to pass tonight. Thanks for your patience in dealing with this. I think at the end of the day, you'll be better off with this rezone versus a PD. So I understand your frustrations. Bear with us. I think we're getting to the right answer shortly.
Okay. More?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, our apologies for this taking so long and you jumped through so many hoops, but we are trying to get those things corrected, so thank you for hanging in there, but I also think this makes a lot more sense as a zone change.
Okay. Come from board now.
And I'll just ditto both those points. Staff is doing what staff needs to do under the requirements of the future land use plans and the other documents that they have to compare it to, and we're looking at it a little more out of the box than what those plans allow staff to do. And I agree. I think it's the right move for that area. That area is very mixed use, much like Garden and O'Day, in that same general area of Pearland that it developed a long time ago as industrial, and then residential came in around them for the most part. So I think it's a good move.
Councilman Little?
Well, I appreciate the applicant's efforts to bend over and accommodate staff and council's request. I drove that road to get familiar with the area, and the one side that the applicant's applying for the zoning change is there are quite a few commercial businesses already that are attractive businesses, and the residential areas are not that attractive on that side of the road. So I think this will be a nice addition to that area, so I'm probably going to support it.
Senator Perez?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think it was all said by the other council members. I'm supportive of this. I think the zone change is the best. Cleaner is your way to go about this. So thank you for your patience. Also, thank staff for working through this.
Yeah, Councilman Owens?
Okay. Yeah, George, I think we went through this one time before, didn't we? A few years back.
and bought that property out, or the lady that owned, if I remember correctly, adjoining to the, I don't have a problem with it going in out there. I think, I'd a lot rather see it in that location than on 518. And start putting storage places within 100 feet of each other on 518. So I have no problem with this at all in that particular area.
Okay. That completes the City Council. Ask the Chairman of the Planning Commission.
Yeah, no, just a comment. I agree with Councilman Owens. I remember about a year ago there were some storage facilities that came through and they were going to be on 518. And there was a big turnout here of people that were against it. And I think the general conclusion was, we don't want it on 518 because there's plenty of other places we could put it. Yeah. And I think it looks like this. Yeah. So that's what you think. I think I'm okay with it.
Good memory.
Any comment at this time?
All right, comment.
I agree with the city council on this. I think that having that down there, you got that subdivision right there, and there's plenty of people who's got boats and RVs and stuff. They need a place to put them to keep them out of these neighborhoods and such. So I think it's a good fit.
Okay.
I have nothing to add, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Moving to item number 4, would allow me to adjourn this docket public hearing for zone change 17-00016 at 8:28. And in a like manner, open a docket public hearing for zone change 17-00017. And as Chairman of the Planning Commission, read into the record the purpose of the hearing tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request of Amanda R. Bennett, applicant owner, for approval of a change in zoning from single-family residential R1 to general commercial GC on approximately 1.98 acres of land. This is 6518 Rice Road.
Okay. And information on the record. Let's move down to 1A, which is application information case summary. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Zone 17-0017. The applicant and property owner is Amanda Bennett. And this request is for a zone change from R1 to general commercial. The applicant proposes the rezoning to operate a catering business in the rear of the property. The rezoned area would be approximately 60 by 130 feet, excuse me, creating a commercial flag lot around the residence. The property is currently developed as a single-family residence, and it was annexed into the city of Pearland in 1983. Exhibit 1 shows an aerial map of the property. Exhibit 2 is the zoning map, and if you look at the front 140 feet, it is yellow, representing residential 1, and the remaining 335 feet in the rear is zone GC, and the house sits in the middle of both those zones. Exhibit 3 is the future land use plan map, and it shows the future land use as industrial, which is non-conforming with that area of Rice Road. This is a view facing north from the subject property. This is a view south, looking directly at the subject property. This is a view facing east along Rice Road of the subject property. And this is a view facing west along Rice Road of the subject property. Prior to JPH tonight, there were 2 comments in opposition to the requested zone change request. The code conformance table, as you saw on the future land use plan map, it does not conform to the industrial designation that's zoned there, but neither do the majority of those homes along Rice Road. Rice Road is a neighborhood street, so it does comply with the thoroughfare plan. In regards to the UDC, as I stated earlier, the front 140 feet of the property is zone R1, and the front half of the residence is located there, which is a conforming use. However, the rear is zone GC, which is the remaining 335 feet. So it's, an interesting zone property. It was platted as Heritage Miller subdivision, but it was not recorded. So a plat would be required. And there are city water and sanitary sewer facilities in regards to utilities. Criteria for approval. So these are the criteria in regards to the UDC, in regards to zone changing. Staff recommendation. Staff does not recommend approval of the requested change in zoning on the approximate 1.98 acre site for the following reasons. Number one, the proposed zone change from R1 to GC does not implement the policies of the adopted comprehensive plan or the low density residential development that single family residential zoning classifications promote. In addition, retail or commercial uses are encouraged to be located at intersections near residential areas and along major thoroughfares, such as Broadway. Number two, the commercial nature of uses permitted by the change in zoning district classification to GC and the standards applicable to such uses would juxtapose the existing residential uses and would not be appropriate in the immediate area of the land to be classified. Number three, the proposed change in zoning to GC is not in accord with any existing or proposed plans for providing public schools, streets, water supply, sanitary sewer, and other public services and utilities to the area. And this completes staff's report.
Okay. With that information on the record, let's move to item B, which will let the applicant make a presentation of his proposed use of the property. Is the applicant here tonight? Oh, there she is. I thought I saw her. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you guys for having me.
Had to get your baggage together, huh? Give us your name and address for the purpose of the record.
My name is Mandy Bennett Niskevitz, and our address is 6518 Rice Road,
Okay.
the subject property. I'm sorry you guys had to see half of our home on the street. I own and operate a 13-year-old catering corporation called Delish, previously located at the Shops at the Houston Centers, downtown Houston from 2011 to 2016. Recently married, and with my lease coming up, my husband and I decided to make the move from downtown. The plan was to find property to own and build a business when we realized we could also need a place to live. Finally, we had the idea to find land to successfully do both. We chose Pearland because my husband and I both attended Dobie, just 5 miles away, and we have many family and friends in the area. We diligently searched to find property to purchase in Pearland for not only what we could afford, but what zoned for the business or mixed use, to have city water, sewer, gas, preferably close to Beltway for catering travel, and maybe even have some visibility for the business. Knowing this was a very specific search, we jokingly referred to this as needle in a haystack project. I have tried my best to be informed as to the city requirements throughout our search in this very specific dual effort. After a year, we finally closed this April on almost 2 acres, zoned both GC and R1 with a 4-bedroom house on it. Unfortunately for us, our home did flood. Harvey and half of our home, as you saw, is on the curb. We will rebuild. Unfortunately, not only did we find property to meet our specific needs, we will soon have 181 foot of frontage on the main thoroughfare McCard. However, the McCard project is not scheduled until 2020. In speaking with the city, we learned that we currently do not have proper access to the general commercial majority of the property other than through the current R-1 side until McCard is complete. Fortunately, I'm still able to work using my family's food truck on an off-site location for me to continue to generate income depending on reputation, retention, repeat business, and referrals. The fact is my small business will not survive operating as is for another 3 years. I'm emotional, I'm pregnant. We're having our family sooner than later, I'm so sorry. Moving my small business from downtown has saved us a lot of money, but we also have lost business by not promoting or marketing in this interim. Therefore, we are simply requesting a rezone of the 60 by 130 unused area of our residential property to GC to have proper temporary access to begin rebuilding my beloved business. We plan to build an approximate 1,500 square foot building as a production facility only. We already own all the equipment. We just need to get a building, run utilities, get things up and running to finally and proudly promote and market our new location in Pearland. This rezone is the next step required to get my business to the next step to the great city of Pearland. We plan to plat the property accordingly and continue to follow through with all necessary permits. My father is a general contractor for over 30 years. We plan to build this kitchen beautiful together to code and to last. We also believe this temporary access will be a benefit of future use to have a secondary emergency exit from the general commercial property for safety purposes even when McCart is finished. I have spoken to our surrounding neighbors, and to my knowledge, no one has had an issue with our plans. I've explained that we would simply have a second driveway off a Rice Road, as most properties do on our street. Rest assured that they can expect a slight increase of 1 to 2 more cars on a daily basis as our employees need to access work. Conveniently, myself, my husband, and our neighbor Sarah are already employees to be on site, not open to the public. We would not only like Pearland to be our home, but our place of business and where we will raise our children. My overall goal is to be close to my family and a successful business owner here in Pearland. Thank you, guys.
Good. Appreciate your comments. Thank you. With that information in the record, and with opportunity for staff to make any wrap-up comments at this point?
No, sir.
Let us move then to item number 2 on our agenda, which will let persons wishing to speak for or against this proposed request to step. I see somebody in the movement in the back there. Is there anyone, one of you supposed to be, okay, one on the way. And I think you must be Ricky Boyd.
B-O-R-T.
Okay, B-O-R-T.
Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you for being here, Ricky.
Good catch.
I'm sorry I was trying to attack you, but
All right, good evening.
you can talk it down there now.
A little bit. All right, I've lived in Pearland for 30 plus years. We lived down the Rice Street for over 20 years. It's one of the very few older community areas that still have lots of land, that are larger lots of land. We don't want this type of thing. The main thing is it's not a commercial zone. That's residential. We bought those properties so that our kids could be raised on larger lots. We have soccer practice there. We have small churches. We have a lot of different things that take place on those larger lots of land. We understand that McCard Road extension is going to be going through. Great. It'll take the traffic off our road. But why are we going to allow these areas to be rezoned? Once they're zoned, are we going to be able to move them back?
Yeah, can we put that up there on the screen?
And do those things. So we are opposed.
Thank you.
We are opposed to the development of this. I'm sorry that they bought the land without making these decisions before they purchased it. But we've been there a long time and we don't want to see that. I speak for one of my neighbors that did not fill out the form. I know she's not here, but I also speak for several others.
Good. I appreciate those comments. Is there anyone else? I see one back at the back, yes. And Ricky filled out one of these forms. Did you fill out one as well? Good. Thank you. Appreciate you. Give us your name and address, and then tell us your story.
My name is Mike Nucky. I live at 6442 Rice Road, right next to the, on the west side of the piece of property that is being proposed to be zone changed.
Okay.
Initially, when the folks moved in, they wanted to move their catering business there. I didn't have any objection to that. They talked about putting a road in to get back to it. I wasn't really in favor, but I didn't object to that. Then I got the proposed zoning notice where the whole thing is to be rezoned commercial. Once it's rezoned commercial, it's commercial. And if things fall apart tomorrow and somebody else wants to come in and apply for another liquor license, I really don't want that next door to me. There is no buffer zone between their property and mine. My bedrooms are right there along the side of that property. And yes, there may be only a few people work there. Catering business, you're going to have food and services come in there every time you want to make up a meal, so you're going to have vehicles. The other problem with Rice Road, it's a narrow road, bar ditches on both sides. We've already had accidents right in front of my house with commercial vehicles and automobiles. Just not a good situation. There is no place along that road to widen it, because if you do, you're going into the ditches. We already have a flooding problem in that area. If you take the ditches away, it's just going to make the situation worse. I feel at this point it's going to be a negative impact to us. I would like for them to have their catering business and go forth with it, but to turn the whole piece of property into commercial, I am not in favor of it.
Good. Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to? Yes, I see one. Yep. Thank you for being here tonight, too. So thank you, sir.
My name is Joe Bennett. I live at 10227 Kirk Wren Drive in Houston, Texas. I've been a commercial general contractor for over 40 years. Just to give you just a little piece of my experience. The information that I just read on the screen is incorrect. We're not requesting. When we say we, I have a vested interest in the company. Mandy is my daughter. And I'll just show you on the screen, if I can, I'll talk a little louder. This area is zoned commercial. This is where she's going to build her business and have access off of McCart to it. The only thing we're requesting right now is a temporary way to, along the side of her property, to get back here where the structure is going to be built for access. The type of company that it is, the business it is, doesn't lend itself to have a lot of people come to it. You have the people working there. Catering business, you might have 2 to 3 people. Every once in a while, you might have a function where you require more staff. What's the other part? See, the information that was on there reads that you're trying to rezone the entire piece of property from the yellow section included from R1 to commercial. That is incorrect. It does state in there there's a small strip to the side of it. It's 140 feet deep and 30 feet wide, something like that, off the top of my head. A temporary roadway to get to the property where the building's going to be built, again, until the card is developed in 2020, I think is the scheduled time. I know I'm going to be repeatedly repetitive here, but it wouldn't have any more traffic flow than a residence that had 4 people that lived in it that came and went. It's very sporadic. You might have people coming in the morning, fix things, and then they leave, or they take the food out to a venue or something like that. But I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page as far as what the request was. It's not asked to rezone the whole property, not at all. It's just a small section on the side to gain access to the commercial property in the back that can't be accessed any other way until McCart is built. She's looking forward to having the facility there and offering to the public to come and use and have a venue there for people to come and have receptions and things like that. I think I've said all I need to. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Good. Your presentation is better without the microphone.
I have been known to talk, Leon.
I appreciate that because the microphone doesn't work too well.
I'm a native Houstonian. I've lived in Kirkmont, Sagemont area forever. I'm on the board of directors of the Volunteer Fire Department. I've helped develop El Franco Lee for the Sports Association. So I'm really involved in the community and especially backing my daughter. Monetarily and any other way that I can. And she really was really happy about being in the Pearland area because we've been living in this area for since the early 70s actually, when my first house flooded. And
continue to speak to the back of the room. That's always good. So thank you for your presentation.
Anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Bye. Is there anyone else? I see there is one other. Yes. Did you fill out a form incidentally?
Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is...
good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. Yes, sir. My name is David Reyna, and I live one lot from the corner at 6416 Rice Street. And I'm opposed from this development because I believe it's going to generate extra traffic down Rice Street. That's the only concern that I have. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate that comment. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? I say yes, we do. Thank you for being here, ma'am.
Good evening. I did.
Yeah, thank you.
Too high for us.
They're coming down after you.
Thank you. I'm Mary Helen Perez. I live at 1618 Hatfield, which is that's Rice Road. And I have lived in that area 50 plus years. And I really don't want to feel like a commercial place, business be in this area, just like you have a quiet neighborhood that we have at this time. This road, I know that it's narrow and no sidewalks, as you know, in that area. And anyway, the general business is a wide variety of business, according to the definition that I saw on the zoning. That would leave it wide open. If they should make hay, what could come in next? And that's what we don't feel comfortable with. So I stand to say the request not be approved for. Thank you.
Good. I appreciate those comments. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else want to make that's good. Thank you for being here.
How you doing? I'm Joseph Miscave. It's Mandy's husband. I live at 6518 Rice Road. Marine Corps veteran, 8 years, military police. I guarantee there's going to be no more generated traffic than what's already there now, or what people that have 5 or 6 cars outside their house generally have every day. You know, we're talking about a little driveway that's going to go back to the back of our property that's going to have a privacy fence. I mean, no different than somebody having a little baseball field in their backyard, or, you know, tons of equipment they don't even use anymore, rusted and just eyesores. You're not going to see that. It's just going to be a driveway going to the back. And maybe in the future we can turn that driveway into a circle drive as we build our property and grow together and do everything like that. But I mean, all it is a strip going to the back, privacy fence. Future, McCard's going to open. You know, we're going to have access from that side, and then that's no longer going to be a use. This is a temporary thing. It's not going to be long term. Trust me, we don't even want to do this and go through this. We'd rather just have McCard open and avoid all this. Because last thing we want to do is, you know, piss off our neighbors, anything like that, you know. But let's see what's going on. Anyway, you know, like I'm saying, there's eyesores all up and down the block. No one's complaining about that. But we're talking about doing something that's going to be completely private until they open up McCard, and that's going to be the only side you're going to see it from. So, I believe that's all I have to say right now.
Good.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to enter into record a comment or statement at this point? I don't see any movement in the audience on that, so let us move on down to item number 3, which will let the council inject some comments at this point, starting with Councilmember Owens.
I don't have any comment right now, Mayor.
Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a tough one. I think for the zone change, I'm not going to be in favor of the zone change, but I do think that there are solutions to this if we can get creative. Robert, can I borrow you for a second? Do you know what the status of the plating the right of way from McCart is at present?
We're in land acquisition at this time, and that's where we're at.
Okay.
We're waiting for TxDOT to get final review of the strip map. Once we have that, then we'll formally turn loose all of our assessors to start visiting with the homeowners. Right now we're doing the research, but I need that strip map approved. That's where I'm at.
Okay. What do you think the timing of that right of way being?
We planned 12 months for that right of way. Once that's acquired, then we'll start associated with that. We'll start looking at water and sewer installation separately, so we can be ahead of the curve. And for the TxDOT letting schedule, that'll be 2020, as stated earlier, with regards to that to start the roadway.
So right now it doesn't have rear legal access. What I would like to see if I could do is make everything easier on everybody, because I don't think anybody, to include the applicant, wants the front half of this tract, the zone change to GB. And it's kind of an odd situation in that the properties were split. I don't necessarily see, maybe when we review the future land use plan, we can talk about whether industrial zone on the future land use is appropriate for this. But I do take note that staff has done their job in their recommendation. But I think there's a way that we can probably do this with a variance, maybe if we can allow for the property to be developed on the condition of the right-of-way moving forward. We know the right-of-way is going to move forward, and then allow for access easement in the rear to temporary gain access in the rear bit of the property with an automatic repealer once the right-of-way is dedicated. That way they can gain access. They'll have future access with McCard, so long as we can find a comfort level on staff that will be the right-of-way, that there's not going to be any other surprises, that ultimately the back end of this track will legally front a road, and save the zone change process.
I mean, go ahead.
Well, because essentially we're asking, what we would be doing is asking for a variance on the subdivision of the tract, such that it doesn't have legal frontage, but only in a temporary condition.
Right. I mean, I know that the UDC, I believe, has a requirement that you can't access commercial property through a residential property.
No, and I think as a permanent situation, I think that is absolutely the only solution to this is something nobody wants, which is to well, there's two solutions. One, I'm not supportive of the zone change because I don't think the front part of that property I don't think should be zone GC. Right now it doesn't conform with the future land use plan, and it doesn't really conform with how the area is developed. So and there's too much opposition from the adjacent landowners for me to be supportive of it. But the back half is already GC. We want to give them the ability to use the GC and have the McCard frontage, but maybe jump ahead of the schedule a little bit and allow them to gain access to what is eventually going to be the rear of their property. They can subdivide it. They can subdivide it with the access, and then we can do it with a variance that has an automatic repealer written into the variance. That once the McCard right-of-way is recorded, that the repeal goes into place, and then the access and maybe even potentially the frontage can go away. It's creative.
Right. I'm thinking out loud right now because the ZBA, when you think of a variance, you're actually looking at taking conditions and then varying them. For instance, a 6-foot sidewalk, and saying, hey, I don't want to say, can I do a 4-foot sidewalk? And that's a variance. Here, you're really talking about waiving a requirement temporarily, is what you're talking about.
Yes.
And so the question is that really consistent with the variance process that's currently in the UDC? And I don't know that I can answer that for you right now without having to look further into the UDC requirements.
Yeah, I'm going to get I have the distinct feeling that the zone change will probably not happen, or at least, again, I'm not going to be supportive of the zone change. But I've done something similar. I think that there's a creative solution to that with some creative interpretations of our UDC, and I don't like doing that, other than the fact that we know that, but for about a year and a half, it wouldn't be an issue.
And just so y'all know, just from a staff perspective, please understand, when y'all ask us to get creative and stuff, it puts the staff in a really bad bind, because creative today can make you happy, creative tomorrow can, to use his term, piss you off. And so I don't want to get in that position. So I just want y'all to understand the difficult position that puts us in.
No, and I appreciate that, and I don't want to put you on a difficult position. I know what I would propose if I were their consultant, and I think that they need a consultant to propose it and allow it to go through, allow the consultant to, it's not our staff's job to find the solution.
Right.
I think the solution is there, and they are required to hire a consultant to provide them the information they need and facilitate the process for a creative solution to get to the point where they can apply for the variance and allow the body that would approve the variance do their job, only with their application, not with staff facilitating it for them. And I hope, I apologize if it sounded as if I wanted staff to be their consultant or find the solution for them. But I can point to a couple of people in the audience that they may want to introduce themselves to that are consultants that could probably do this for you. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but it's going to be a better path than, it's likely to be a better path than the zone change. And then if neither works, then you're probably looking for another piece of property. So there's too much opposition. To be honest with you, it's just not appropriate to push that up. I mean, I think there needs to be some review from council about the zoning for this property and where the split is and what we want to do with that at some point. But I think that there's a path through a variance process that makes more sense than the zone change.
And I think moving forward, obviously, if for some reason the zoning were not approved this evening, I think clearly staff will explore any opportunities that exist, whether it be through a zoning board of adjustment variance. Don't think this fits into the special exceptions provisions or anything, but we can look and see what's out there in the UDC and explore that.
Okay.
Are you finished?
A little.
Well, I'm not in support of a zoning change because of some of the same reasons Trent suggested. It's just not right in this area. You look north, south, east, and west, and you see decent-looking homes, and apparently people have lived there for quite some time. A lot of public opposition to it, so I'm not inclined to support the zoning change. But if there is a process that would allow you to access the rear of your property, then I would suggest that you pursue that. And because I hate to see you not be able to fulfill your dreams, and you're going to be able to do it anyway when the card goes through. So some of the reasons that your neighbors oppose the business because they don't want a business in the area, you can do anyway. I can understand their concerns about the additional traffic up and down Rice, but if we can find a temporary solution, that's what I would suggest you try to do.
Yeah, I pretty much agree here. One thing I would like to say is this is not, in my opinion, uncommon in our zoning maps to have properties with more than one zone on it. It's something that for some reason, I don't know how it happened. I don't like it. We dealt with one Pearland Parkway and Berry Rose a while back that had 4 different zonings on one platted piece of property. That makes it very difficult for development. In this case, the use is allowed. They can do general commercial business use at the back of their property. The issue is they can't get it out. Now, if you've thought about a drone, maybe that would be the option. And what we do know, or what we're fairly sure of, unless I'm not even going to go into the options of what the EPA could do to stop the McCard Road, but McCard Road coming through does open that up. So for anyone living in the area that does not want to live around commercial development, my suggestion is start looking, because it is coming. With McCard Road, you're going to have a 4-lane divided road, much like Pearland Parkway. Land values will, chances are, go up, and commercial development comes with the traffic that's going to be down there. I live in the old town site, and I'll be honest, I look forward to taking McCalla over to McCard and being able to get to 288. So it's a temporary fix we're looking for something that is going to happen. So, I mean, my common sense says, let's find a way to not delay something that's inevitable anyway. And the drone may be your option. I'm not sure. But, yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay, Councilmember.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'm not in favor of the zone change because it's zoned already the way that the applicant needs it to be. So there's nothing to really change there. I agree. The issue is the availability to the backside of the property until McCard comes through. Once McCard comes through, there's going to be all kind of stuff up and down McCard. I'm not in favor of the zone change, but I don't think that's the direction that needs to be taken. It's a variance, whatever you want to call it, on getting from the front side of the property to the back side of the property temporarily until McCard is opened up to where there's access there. So, I would be in favor if we could find some kind of solution to that until McCard was open. But this is not a zone change for me.
Can I add one thing real quick? I would like to look at that future land use. I understand at the time why industrial might have been put up there, but with McCard, I think that does change the nature of that area. Sorry,
Councilmember Carbone.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just echo the comments of the other councilman. But this is, we heard some frustrations from Mr. Gardner. This is the reason why the city is, as a councilor, as a body, is getting a black eye for not being small business friendly. But I don't know that this zone makes sense. I hope there's some other way to get to the right solution. But at the end of the day, 20/20 hindsight. You can't buy the property and do what you want to do. And the worst case is you have to wait till McCard comes through. And I feel for the applicant for the place they're in, but at the same time, those are the rules when you bought the property short time ago, and we've got to balance that with folks that have been here for 20 or 30 years in this residential street. So I hope we can get to a solution that makes sense for everybody, but it's another time the city gets a black eye, and I don't know it's 100% the city's fault, but I hope we can get to a solution. That's all I have to say, Mayor.
Okay. Well, it's quite interesting as the process we're going through on this one. Councilmember, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, for me, I'd be in favor of some sort of a waiver if that kind of instrument exists, which I don't know.
Would you have?
I agree. I think there should be some kind of a way to get access
to the property to let them do what they want to do, at least on a temporary basis. I don't think a zone change is the actual, I don't even know why they suggested really.
I don't have any comments.
Anything? I guess in looking at it, at first I thought this was clearly a no, but with the McCard Road coming through, it kind of changes things a bit. So all those lots that are that deep are probably going to be split up later in life and be sold to businesses along McCard, which kind of makes me believe that was the future land use plan and the McCard Road project were known at the same time when those were being updated. At least that line seems to be pretty clear across there. So the city's put the GC, they've put the zone on the property and given the property owner the issue. I'm assuming that happened through a process at the time. And the applicant's not asking for total zone change. He's asking for a strip, creating a flag lot commercial, which would be accessed through Rice Road, unfortunately. You know, it's a very deep lot. So, yes, I would oppose this if I didn't know McCard was coming through there. I'm on the line whether or not a 60 or 30, 40 foot strip to create a flag lot would be okay. I also question what's the difference in what caused the difference to come up with any other home business on that in that area or in Pearland for that matter, where a person is doing business out of their garage or out of their larger garage that is offset from their home on a larger lot, but don't advertise it or hang up a sign.
Build a shed.
So we dealt with one of these earlier that was a yoga studio, and the only thing that brought it up was that they hung a placard on the building and it said yoga studio, and then all of a sudden, boom, we have to change zoning on that property to make it okay. I guess the question is they asked for permission and found out that this all existed. And we're really talking about a driveway. They probably already have a driveway. They could access the building. They could build it. They just can't officially hang up a sign. So you could build a large garage in the back of your property, and it's none of the city's business what's in it, except that they're going to build a building. For the zone change, I would definitely be on the line. I wouldn't be totally against it, but it seems like everybody around there is scared that somebody's going to have a bunch of traffic through that driveway. And with the zone change, there's no way to limit that. The only way to limit it would be a PD, or if a CUP was allowed in that zoning district, you could put a condition on it. But this use isn't allowed in residential. So unfortunately, this is one of those situations where the city's maps have gotten us into a quandary with the person that wants to come here and do business. And for the Planning and Zoning Commission, it's one of those where it's pretty clear how we have to vote. If it's straight up or down on the zone change, it's probably going to be a no. I don't have any tricks to go around that. We can't do a temporary zone change until McCard gets here. That's not an option. The commission certainly is open to suggestion of how we should handle it from staff or otherwise.
Mr. Carlson, have any wrap-up comments?
Yeah, Mayor. I just have one. When was the zoning, the GC zoning placed on this property?
So my best efforts at researching where that R1 GC line came from dated back to a 96 or a 97 map when a portion was brought in and it was zoned then, and then the other portion was brought in at that time. So I think it was half the lot was brought in and then half, but those maps are not the best to read. So.
Right, understand. And what we're looking at, just to be clear, is current zoning, future zoning has all this industrial.
Correct.
Okay.
And we found that the future ones are off That has to change.
Yeah, with McCard coming through, I very seriously doubt it's going to end up industrial. It's going to be GC.
I think with I think with McCard coming through, maybe not the people who are here that are passionate about their property, but most of those that would then front McCard would sell their $1 a square foot lot for $8 a square foot, and it all end up commercial. And I almost guarantee inside of 10 years that's what's going to happen to it, because that's the smart thing to do for most of the people that don't want to be there for after the road goes through. I do want to clarify. Look, you can't build a garage and put a commercial business in there, particularly not one that cooks. So that wasn't a suggestion. You have to go through a permitting process, and you would be stopped at that point. So
Only if you put up a sign.
no, if you just start putting up bricks, somebody will come and stop you. So, but I think there's, like I said, I think there's a solution.
Okay. I'm done, Mayor.
Okay. We have sort of an enigma wrapped up in confusion. Moving down to the last item I'm going to bring up here is the staff. Does staff have any wrap-up comments at this point?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Just
all right.
So if we go to bullet point, the second one here, just for clarity purposes,
Thank you.
What they're requesting is a 60 by 130 foot strip that will create a flag zone. So, just for clarity purposes, so the neighbors would know that the entire area would not be zoned GC, well, requested zone GC, just that 60 by 130 strip of land on the west side of the property. And also, I heard several council members mention that the future land use plan is industrial, and planning staff, we have discussed there are some areas that we need to look at in regards to the future land use plan, and that is one area that has been discussed by staff.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, let me move then to item 4, which will let us adjourn this particular public hearing, which I shall do at 9:13. And the council will move from this position. The City Planning Commission will move into this position.
Okay, let's see if we can go ahead and get started and open the regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting September 11th, 2017 at 9:24. Let the record show Troy Prodi is not present. So moving on to item 2, our consent agenda, we have 4 items on the consent agenda. Consideration and possible action, approval of minutes from July 17th, 2017 and September 7th, 2017. Item B, consideration and possible action, final plat of Lake Park Phase 1, Section 3. Consideration and possible action, preliminary plat of Mirror Lake. That's item C. Item D, consideration and possible action, final plat of South Lake, Section 12. Do any of the commissioners wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? Hearing no items to be removed, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve consent.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 5-0. Going on to item 3, new business. Item A, consideration and possible action, variance from minimum lot width and area to allow platting of a lot. This is a request by Tobbs Slayton of True Meridian PLLC, applicant on behalf of party bar owner for approval of a variance permitted in section 2.4.4.5 C1A and B of the UDC ordinance number 2000T to reduce the minimum lot width from 150 feet to a varied range of 25.44 to 80 feet, and the minimum lot size from 22,500 square feet to 11,888 square feet for an existing lot zoned general business. This general location is 3900 block of 3rd Street. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve variance in minimum lot width and area to allow platting of a lot.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Staff have a report.
Thank you, sir. So, variance 17-00016. The general location is the 3900 block of 3rd Street, and they would like to plat a lot in the GB zoning district, and they want to build a rental storage building on that lot. And the minimum lot area per the UDC is 22,500 square feet, and the minimum lot width is 150 feet. Staff recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the requested variance to reduce the minimum lot width and area per the requirements of section 2.4.4.5C, 1A and B of the UDC, ordinance number 2000-T. The subject property is currently zoned GB, and it was originally intended to be single-family residential. And currently there are a variety of land uses along 3rd Street. The properties to the north and the east are zoned GB. There are railroad tracks located to the west, and Mary's Creek is located to the south. So they're kind of limited on what they can put on their property, as they're kind of boxed in to the south and to the west. The applicant proposes to submit an application for a minor plat to allow the platting of a lot will be in conformance of RE single-family estate zoning district standards. The required lot dimensions, as I stated, for area is 22,500 square feet, and they're proposing 11,888 square feet. The lot width is required 150 feet, and they're proposing 80 feet at the front property line and 25.44 feet at the rear property line. And the minimum lot depth requirement per the UDC is 125 feet. And this lot has lot depth that ranges from 225.3 feet to 232 feet. Surrounding zoning and land uses. To the north, it's zone GB, and it's undeveloped. To the south, M1, light industrial, and it's Mary's Creek. To the east is GB, and it's a single-family residential home. And to the west, NA, because of the railroad tracks. Conclusion. The proposed lot will conform to all the minimum dimensions of the GB General Business Retail Zoning District, except for the minimum lot width and the minimum total lot area. The total lot area is 11,888 square feet and ranges from 25.44 feet to 80 feet wide due to the unique way the subdivision plat was recorded. The variance to the minimum lot depth is not expected to negatively impact the surrounding variety of land uses. Exhibit 1, which is the area map, and it shows the unique shape of this lot. It starts out pretty wide at the north, but as you move south, it gets narrow. And as you can see, the railroad tracks to the west and the creek to the south. This is a zoning map, Exhibit 2. This is the future land use plan map, Exhibit 3. This is a survey of the property. And this is a ground view of the subject property. And as you can note, to the west side there, the railroad tracks. And in February 2017, a similar variance was granted for the property just to the north to plat their land. So it's on the north side there of North Street, the last house on the left. And it has a similar unique shape as well. And that concludes staff reports.
Thank you. Commissioners, have any questions or comments?
So the purpose of this is just to give a variance to plat the property so they can actually use their property.
Yes, sir.
I'm good with that.
Ready? Okay, we'll put no further comments or questions. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item B, consideration possible action, conditional use permit application number CUP 17-00014. This is a request of Kerry R, Gilbert and Associates, represented by Jennifer Curtis, applicant on behalf of Global XYZ Development LLC, represented by Archana Thada, owner, for approval of an amendment to the site plan for ordinance number CUP 2014-09 in the Business Park BP 288 zoning district on approximately 3.0679 acres of land. This is approximately 1,600 feet north of County Road 59 on the west side of Business Center Drive, Pearland, Texas. This was previously discussed in our joint public hearing. Do I hear a motion?
So moved that we approve the application.
Second.
CUP.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Staff have anything further to add?
Just one quick note. We are planning on taking this early to the 18th for first reading. I know I said during the JPS that everything was going to October, but this one is going early. So we'll be following this up next week at council for its first reading. Just one clarification.
Daryl, you have any questions? Mary?
No.
Anything?
So my only question is, if the UDC changes go into effect concerning CUPs, which they don't take away the site plan as part of the CUP process, but they allow a lot more flexibility with the site, will those rules apply to this one also, even if it gets approved before that change? So are we gonna, if those rules get passed, will this one have flexibility with the site plan for future use?
Currently, I don't know if that's working. Currently, the UDC requirements, as the CUPs are being adopted as an ordinance, whereas the future rules would not be an ordinance. It's going to be done as a true permit. I don't believe that a permit can override an ordinance that's in place.
Okay.
So because this one is an ordinance, it's going to stick with it unless there's a change in the future for the entire site plan or either of these particular lots.
Okay.
Where I'd like to solve all the city's issues with these things, we have to vote on what's in front of us. Are there any further discussion or comments? Okay. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item C, consideration and possible action, conditional use permit application number CUP 17-00015. This is a request of Gilbert Mandke PLLC, applicant on behalf of AVK Properties LLC, presented by Kannimel O. Mathew, owner, for approval of conditional use permit CUP to allow for a liquor package store in the general business GB zoning district on approximately 3.1312 acres of land, 9603 Broadway Street. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve CP 17-00015.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Also previously heard in JPH. Staff have anything further to add?
No, sir.
Start with David. Do you have any questions or comments for staff or the applicant?
No.
Anything, Thomas? Mary?
No.
Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes 3-2. Let me ask, Daryl, you wish to add any comments to the record that would be read to council?
It's just what I've said all along. Until we have that meeting, until we all get together on what's going to be appropriate, I'm not voting for another liquor store. I think we got them on every corner. I think it's gotten ridiculous how many we've got. And like I said, I know that the population of the people, the biggest majority of the people said they wanted liquor in here, but I do not think they meant one on every cotton picking corner of Pearland up and down Broadway. So, until we come up with some type of criteria, I'm going to stick to my guns.
And my comments to council would be that we were not presented with anything other than an application which gave no details of what the business was going to include other than a liquor store. And I don't think that's the best fit for the property without having more details presented to the commission. Okay, moving on to item D, consideration possible action, conditional use permit application number CUP 17-00016. This is a request of Pogi USA LLC, applicant and owner, represented by Bruce Honore, for approval of a conditional use permit CUP to allow for a truck, heavy, and bus rental or sales used in the general commercial GC zoning district on approximately 3.1092 acres of land. The general location is 6601 Broadway Street.
I'll move to approve CP 17-00016 and include staff's recommendations on additional landscaping.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. This one was also heard in the joint public hearing. Does staff have anything to add to the
No, sir.
report? Daryl, anything to add? Mary? David? Again, with the use, I'm torn here with what we do with conditional use permits. When we look at things that impact property that people may be concerned about, we did have one in opposition that filed I guess faxed in something or emailed in or what have you. I guess the concern there is, again, with the layout we've seen, is that okay to pass this through on a CUP? The motion was with staff's recommendation for landscaping, additional landscaping requirements on the new lots. Personally, being in engineering, you want to see what they're going to build. So I would at least like to see a sketch that is representative of what's going to be there, and I understand that may not be available at the time of the permit due to cost or what have you. So on this one, I'm voting on basically the business and what I think that business is going to look like on that piece of property, what items I think may be an issue. So I'll just leave it at that. Any further comments? And just to be clear, we're not adding the site plan as a condition of approval. I didn't hear it.
But currently, the UDC requires a site plan, correct? So the site plan, right now, is part of the.
The difficulty, I think, that was identified is that there may be some compliance issues with the UDC that require revisions to the site plan, but that aren't contained in the site plan now. Right. So if they need to make it changes to comply with those UDC requirements, they would have to come by for an amendment to the site plan, which could, as some people say or have said, that just creates additional frustration because they have to come back again. However, as it stands now, the site plan is tied to the approval process.
If we want to separate that, what would be the process to do that? Would we make an amendment to the CUP and just say site plan will meet the UDC requirements? Because as it is, the way the site plan looks right now, it doesn't. It doesn't account for any of the drainage or anything like that.
I think previously we've just held the first reading until a revised site plan is in.
Yeah, but if there was no site plan, it would still have to meet UDC requirements.
Which there would
have
to be one.
Which at the end of the day,
there
they
would have to be one to have a CUP. I think holding the first reading is a good option until a better site plan is in. Because
it has to meet the UDC. It has to be in place before the first reading. We're going off of a sketch. It's not the site plan.
Right. So is it an incomplete packet?
My opinion, it is.
The commission could recommend conditions to be added to the site plan prior to first reading. So if there's some concerns with how the site plan looks now, in your recommendation, you can add the following concerns.
So I could add that it has to have a site plan that meets UDC.
Yes.
But
it has to.
Isn't that already a condition of the CUP? That it has to have a site plan that meets UDC requirements?
We're just not going to be privileged enough to see
We're
it.
just never going to see it.
We won't see it. Council will see it. I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that. It at least pushes them forward in the process.
And since the applicant's here, the issue I've got is you're dealing with larger trucks. The parking spaces that are outlined on this property appear to be the same size as the ones that are there now. So it's kind of hard to envision what this is going to look like as a heavy truck rental or for that matter, bus sales or anything that is in that use or could be in that use that we're approving later. I'm good with my vote and comment.
It might also be good for the staff to request an auto turn analysis to ensure that the truck movements can actually happen.
I'm good with it the way it is.
Are both of those going to be added as recommendation? The making sure that it's larger truck space size parking spaces and the auto turn?
Well, I guess here's where the issue is. These are pictures, And we've seen them out of scale, we've seen all kinds of things in previous applications. If we can't look at it and see that it's what we think is acceptable, it's kind of hard to render judgment on it when there's not dimensions on the drawing. And obviously, by looking at the satellite photo, this was the original site plan. Is it doesn't match what's actually built. So we're looking at something that's not only not dimensioned out, it's visually, you can tell by satellite photo in this, it's not the same. It's not even a good drawing.
Yeah, but let me propose something that perhaps the purpose of this commission is to determine whether this is a suitable location for this type of business. And if we think it is, then we have to trust that the UDC has accommodations to make sure that the business is built out the way we'd like it to be built out, right? And if there are things that are not in the UDC, such as auto turn, then we should propose it go in the UDC so that when these things happen, we can just approve the location and let it get through.
It's got to go through engineering.
Yeah, I was making more of a suggestion to a program that could help engineering make their decision whether it meets UDC requirements or not. So,
Condition stands on the table as the additional landscaping only. No changes to the submitted site plan. The site plan in general tells you what they're going to do. The words that come along with the site plan, using spots 1 through 5 for truck storage, and additional 6 through 12 in the back. Unless 1 through 5 are made larger, large U-Haul trucks won't fit in those spots, in my opinion. But we'll let engineering look at it, I guess. Hear any other motions for amending the anything? Any amendments? We're good? Okay, so the motion stands to approve with additional landscaping requirements on staff's recommendation.
I thought you already had added in that you wanted to make the other condition being that the site plan has to follow all of UDC rules.
No, that wasn't my original motion. And the reason it wasn't is because they're going to have to follow the UDC rules anyway.
Okay, all right, then that's fine.
So it's
okay.
Anything else? Okay. I have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, me. And the reason to report to council is that the site plan submitted doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't give enough information to accurately rule on the approval. Moving on to item E, consideration of possible action, conditional use permit application number CUP 17-00018. This is a request of RECA Engineering represented by Robert A. Marlowe, applicant on behalf of R West Development Company, owner, for approval of a conditional use permit CUP to allow for a church building to be located in a single-family residential 2 R2 zoning on approximately 2.08 acres of land. This is on the south side of Pearland Parkway across from Oak Ridge Drive. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve CP 17-00018 and include the condition of removing the required buffer on the south side of the property.
Second.
If I could intervene on that, I know that was a recommendation from City Council. However, the UDC specifically states that buffers are ZBA issues, and a CUP cannot remove something that has to be considered by the ZBA.
Okay.
Try that again.
I'll try that again. I move to approve CUP 17-00018.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Staff have anything to add from this item that was previously heard in the JPH?
No, sir. I was just going to add in, what legal had said about. Right. So I'm glad I got brought up.
So no matter what, this body couldn't act on that.
Correct.
Okay. Can we make sure that's reported to council? In our
If it helps, I will read for you the provision that it says. It's subparagraph C, no variances. This condition imposed, this is in the CUP section, this condition imposed on the application shall not be subject to variances that otherwise could be granted by the ZBA, nor may conditions imposed by the City Council subsequently be waived or varied by the ZBA.
Okay, so whatever the ruling is, if we could just add text in there to report to council that we could not remove that buffer.
Just going to put another step on them. They're just going to go before ZBA and get that variance.
Their application's pending,
Yeah,
I think.
it's scheduled to go before the ZBA board on September 21st.
Okay. Any other discussion? David, any other questions, discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. None opposed. Item passes 5-0. Moving on to item F, consideration possible action. Zone change application number zone 17-00016. This is a request of George Gardner, applicant on behalf of Julia Faye Ross, owner, for approval of a change in zoning from suburban residential SR 12 to a general commercial GC zoning district on approximately 9.874 acres of land. This is 2409 and 2421 Max Road. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second from Mary Starr. Also previously heard at our JPH. Does staff have anything to add to this?
No, sir.
So staff recommended denial?
Correct.
David, do you have comments to make on this one? He said no. How about you, Thomas?
I'm good on this one.
Mary?
No, I've been through this area before.
How about you, Darryl?
I'm ready.
Yeah. So I think this is one of those areas where we have to look at it and kind of make some common sense moves and how we got to where they are, and look at the area in specifics and make good judgment calls. So that's my only comment. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Any opposed? 5-0. Okay, moving on to item G, close to the bottom of the list, consideration possible action, zone change, application number zone 17-00017. This is a request of Amanda R. Bennett, applicant owner, for approval of change in zoning from single-family residential R1 to general commercial GC zoning district on approximately 1.98 acres of land. This is 6518 Rice Road. Also previously heard in a joint public hearing. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Staff have anything to add?
No, sir.
Or any?
No, sir.
So I guess I'll open on this one. It seems like we ever so often we get a very unique situation where all the maps and things and disagree with each other to a point, and this is one of those situations. Not knowing how we got to the future land use plan map and McCard Road extension coming through, and this property somehow having R1 and residential sitting on top of the same property. We see this along 518 quite a bit. I mean, there's residential lots, but this is unique in that it's a large piece of property that's split by residential and general business or general commercial. We see it in many places. I've often wondered myself, why don't we draw those lines on the property lines like we do city limits? And understand that maybe back when they laid that on top of the map, these houses weren't there, or there was some reasoning behind it. We're not privy to everything that goes into those maps. That being said, the one that's in front of us, the solution, if I understand it correctly, is to cut a GC strip out of the residential strip to allow access. So we're not talking about a total rezone of the property. We're talking about only a strip to allow access. If I had owned this piece of property from day one, before it was zoned, you bought a piece of property out basically in the country outside of city limits, and it's a certain size that you go, well, in the future I might be able to do something with it. You built a house on it, maybe you want to build a shop behind it and do something, whatever that is. In that time, you could do that. Then along comes the city that zones you, or annexes your property and lays a zoning map on top of it, or however we got there. Multiple steps probably got us here. And now the property is sold to somebody new who's come in and said, well, it's both. This is ideal for my business, is what I'm understanding. And it's a big piece of property. I don't know if you knew anything about McCard Road or not. I did not know before tonight that McCard Road was coming there. I mean, I knew it was coming, but the details of exactly where it was, we don't look at that all the time. So if that was the reason for buying the piece of property, that it's going to be on McCard Road, wow, that's awesome. But with roads going in as slow as they do, if the road's not there right now, you got to kind of ask yourself, how long is it going to be before I get access to it? So if we put a zone on a strip of property here, I kind of looked at that as a spot zone. We're creating a little piece of zone for somebody because it meets their needs. And that's something this body doesn't do. We don't just come in and change one piece that's surrounded by like uses that are all similar and say, okay, we're going to allow this. And also, no, don't take this wrong. I'm kind of speaking to the applicant too. We don't. When you have a residential area, and I know you have intentions of building there, but when we do a zone change, and that's all I say, we're zoning the land, and we can't look at anything but the piece of land we're zoning. So if we do this, we're doing it for not your use, which everybody understands. You've got an awesome business. But we've also seen properties where we change zone on, for whatever reason, not happen, and then it goes to something else that may displease the neighbors even more. You know, so GC is a pretty open wide range of businesses that can go in there. I'm torn on this one. I almost, personally, I would say that the commission should vote on this however they think. We're basically voting on a flag zone, and let the council give their opinion and rule on it. If we're split, then we send it to council with a split decision. I don't think, and staff can weigh in, that there's any other option here other than straight zone on that piece of property. I heard some discussion in between, what are the other options here to get access to a piece of property that we deemed as a city to be GC that has no access?
Well, I'm not sure that zoning is going to be controlling on this at the end of the day, and perhaps Mathew might be able to help us out a little bit better, because if the issue is that you need access to the back and you want to put a driveway back there, even back in '83 when homes were built, or when this was annexed into the city, we had driveway separation requirements. I don't know if the driveway separation requirements would be met, because it appears that they have about 73 feet on Rice Dryer, but I don't know what those requirements are off the top of my head.
Rice Road.
Well, Rice Road has.
I'm sorry, on Rice Road.
And it kind of depends on what we're classifying this dwelling as. Commercially, yes, we always apply those separation requirements. Max Road, I believe, off the top of my head, I don't know if it's what is it a secondary thoroughfare? Secondary?
Rice Road is probably residential.
Yeah, it's going to be residential.
It's just a local street, and it's probably 75-foot spacing.
Between the driveways. Between the driveways.
Between the driveways.
From edge to edge. And we don't always apply those to residences, but being that they're trying to use it for their business, and I would say it's considered commercial. We would gray area.
So would there be a means to, if let's say the separation was there, would there be a means for them to get a driveway to go to their commercial property across the residential zone?
And that's where we would turn to the planning requirement that
Commercial property has to be accessed through a commercial zone. You can't access commercial properties through a residential zone.
So you couldn't.
Which is why they would have to create that flag
You
there.
couldn't have a right of way granted from. Well, it's one single piece of property anyway.
Correct.
And that's the reason I guess we're here, is because you can't. You won't
essentially
allow.
they
You won't
wanted
allow the
that.
driveway to be built to go back to the back. It's just going past the house.
It's either get the zoning to allow the commercial access or wait for McCard Road to come through.
So, if the driveway for the home went onto the property to the house and happened to touch the back of the property,
That would be the planning requirement, or that would be the enforcement of the requirement that you can't access commercial through residential.
so straight up, the only.
So if they took the driveway to the back that goes to the residential, that would be violative
So-
of that provision.
So I'm thinking out loud, and y'all know me. I'll lay it out there. Just ideas. You know, we try to make solutions here. We try to come up with unique solutions sometimes. But it looks to me like the only option is to vote yay or nay on creating the GC flag lot, basically, by granting.
Well, that's the only thing in front of you now. Now, whether
and
there
it's really
are
not
variances,
a flag lot. It's a flag zone.
Yes, it's a flag zone because it is one lot. And if I'm recalling it correctly, this one is not platted because the plat wasn't recorded. But it might have been.
Do we have other areas where, and I'm sure we do, that we have these jagged lines of zoning going
Yes.
through the district? I mean, we've seen that. We've seen that. Council quoted the Kroger's property. We had 4 different zones on that property that we had to deal with. And they really didn't need to. We just made it clean. They could have developed it like they wanted to. It's just we made it better. So personally, I just lay my opinion out. I'm okay with voting on this, and my vote will be yes, because I want to lean toward. They're going to get McCard Road on there. They're going to want to access the business from McCard Road. I can see you probably want to expand the business, and that would come from McCard Road. The only problem I have with that is we can't add any conditions on a zone change.
Correct.
And that's where I'm hesitant. I'm saying we can't say you can't hang a sign out, you can't take public traffic, it's got to be for your personal employees only. There's nothing we can add to that. Once we zone it, then not against you and your business or what your intent is, anyone else down the road could come in and add whatever business that fits in a GC and access it from Rice Road, which is where the residents don't want the traffic. And there's no limit to it. So there's where I'm torn. I see, yes, the solution, and vote on it. Yes, we would do that.
And one thing to keep in mind is that there will be landscape buffers to both residential zone properties. So, that's one thing to, it won't just be a driveway completely up against the residential zone property. They will have some landscape buffers that are required in there.
Which is the reason why it says full 60-foot width.
To have the buffer.
To have the
To have the
buffers
buffers.
and the room for a driveway.
It's a unique situation. A lot of people said no, but a lot of times I think we see people come in and they think it's going to be rezoned totally, and there's going to be a business sitting there on Rice Road, and that's not the case. It can't be. What we have on the table is to rezone that strip. You have a comment, Mary?
Okay. I think most of the people that were against it really were against it because they thought they were rezoning the whole property. I don't think they realized it was a driveway. I think they just thought the whole property was going to be rezoned.
So let me just ask, is there anyone in the audience that was here in opposition? Okay. Do you care to speak once you've heard more about what's being proposed?
No.
If you could just come up to the microphone. Well, we got to have it on the recorded on the record with your address. I'm sorry.
Lawrence.
I just want to give anybody the opportunity to speak that can, because we're here kind of late, and if you hang around, I'll give you the microphone for a few minutes. If you could just say your name and your address.
I'm Mary Perez, 1618 Hatfield Road. And yes, I've heard the arguments and stuff about the property business being in the back. But I know you have to have access to it through Rice Road. And that's what we didn't want commercial, because the zoning looked like it was going to be the whole area. So that was what we're saying. No, we don't want commercial all that lot, because we know once it's changed to commercial, they may vacate in the future. What lies for us coming in there?
Yeah. So for those in the audience, what we have in front of us is a strip to allow access for a driveway, and it will be buffered on each side with landscaping going to the rear of the property, which is the larger general commercial zoned section of the property. But I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
That's already zoned that way. No one's trying to change it. Is that the only, and that the only way you can't build a driveway and on your own residential property to go to another property behind it that belongs to you?
Same property, you can't access the zone through residential property. This is unique in that it has both zoning on it.
So could they build a house in the back?
No.
You can only have one house on the lot. It's single-family residential.
Could they build a giant garage, workshop, residential garage?
There's a limitation on the size of the garage in relation to proportion of the size of the single-family residential dwelling.
Okay.
I'm curious.
But they would allow that in a general commercial, would they allow that in the GC zone in the backyard? A 3-car garage, which is allowed most everywhere else?
I believe you get accessory residential structures.
So there's something you would, okay.
It's the big outdoor kitchen.
I don't have the UDC open immediately in front of me, but I believe that you do get accessory residential.
With walls.
All right. To me, it just doesn't make any sense to landlock commercial land by this rule.
All the residences, even if they're sitting there talking about just the one strip, that, and I feel for them. I mean, I hate to see that they couldn't build a business back there, but once we change that and change that zone on it, it's there forever. And if they were to vacate and sell it to somebody else come in there with a harder stance than what they are, even when McCard comes through, they can still use that property ever how they see fit.
You can use it as a back end because it's only going to be big enough to put a driveway in.
Yeah, they got a driveway there.
And if you have
that can be done.
And if you have a 4-lane thoroughfare right in front of you, that's going to be rarely used for any kind, and especially on a street like Rice Road that isn't built for that already. I just wouldn't put any money on McCard coming in 2020. I think that's a rosy picture estimate. I bet more like 2027, 2028. Just letting you know how transportation works in the area. So.
I was just looking at the property on the satellite image. If you'd like to speak, we'll give you the same time as before. Just state your name again for the record.
Amanda Bennett Niskevitz, 6518 Rice Road. So, of course, everyone has plans, and plans change, and we know this is a part of our plan, especially with the potential of McCard being longer than expected, which I was being, I went to the hearing. We were under contract on the property. We were excited about the McCard because obviously having visibility for your business is important, and this exceeded my expectations to have a home and move forward with our plans. So our intentions for the rezone, obviously to follow the rules, access the commercial property, which is all our property. So to apply to have permission to drive on your own property is, interesting. And we are, at your mercy. So in regards to the neighbors that have been there for many years, that's our plan. And like I'd said, many of the homes in the area have dual driveways. We have 181 foot there. To fall within the 75-foot space of our existing driveway is not a problem. We eventually want to convert that back into our residential property because that's what we bought it for and what our plans were, and where am I going to put my pool? But that's just, I wanted to say that we really kind of want to convert the property to where, it may show on a map someday, but aesthetically, throughout the neighborhood, it would be our purpose to really kind of utilize it for our own personal residential space. Thank you.
Thank you. Final comments, Daryl?
Well, I understand that, but once we vote on this, it's there, and then if you choose to leave and sell out, even though you're sitting there saying that you want to make it a circle drive or whatever you decide to do, once that happens, it's still there. Anybody that buys that property from now on can come in there and access it from that street. Now, it might not make any sense to do it, but they could do it. I'm really torn on this one, strictly from the standpoint that, I feel like the rest of them, to be landlocked, it just makes no sense. But, even if we do pass it here, I don't think it's going to get past City Council from all the negative responses that we got from them. Now, I think you've got several people on City Council that deal with this on a regular basis, as far as developing and such, that I think that there might be somebody to try to give you some guidance on which way to go, if there is a way to go. That's the only thing. You know, I just don't think this is a zone change. Not there in that property. I just don't. So I'm sorry.
You know, it's interesting. I think from the joint meeting and here, the one phrase I keep hearing the most is, "I'm so torn." But let me tell you why I'm not going to do it. Right? So I'm trying to approach this from, I'm torn, but let's think of a way to do it. Right? So let's just kind of. When I think of the most compelling reason not to do it, it's because you have neighbors that don't want to be near that property. Okay. But if you believe, and to your point, it's an if you believe that Ricard is coming in the next few years, then those residential properties may not be as appealing as they are today. Right? So I think there might be a case to say, let's do the flag zone. Let's do it. Let's accommodate somebody, knowing that there's a very good chance that this is the way it's going to play out in the next 3 or 4 years. And there's somebody who you could really accommodate. And if we get it wrong, let's say it's 2027, then Picard comes in, well, then we got this one wrong. We're not going to get everything right. But if we're really torn, let's look at the other side and let's try to make a case to do this. Maybe we just vote for it. Maybe we vote for this. That's what torn really looks like.
Good. Thomas, any last comments?
I'm torn also, but I would side more with David, and I can't leave property that's already zoned landlocked. I don't think getting a driveway is that big of a deal. But I don't know. To me, I think it should happen. But I would also suggest getting a more creative site engineer that can work with you, because you're going to have a drainage plan and all that kind of stuff anyway. So that might be a good option to explore other avenues besides just the zone change. So.
Everybody's got their final comments in?
I just think that we need to give them access to the property. They've got access to it technically, but they can't build on it, so they really don't have access to it. I mean, I know that sounds contradictory, and it is. But I can't see how a driveway is going to hurt the neighborhood, really.
You know what, Mary, just to put another comment on it, we want to do this,
I know.
so let's just do it.
Vote on it.
Sir?
What would prevent us?
If you could just step up to the mic. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I got to follow the rules. If not, Lawrence comes over here and pokes me.
My name is Joe Bennett. I don't need the mic. What's to keep us from applying to rezone the temporary, I'll call it that for sake of argument, commercial driveway area to residential back after the fact?
Nothing. But nothing compels you to do it either.
That would, I mean, if it could be written up, or with the,
It doesn't work that way.
with the understanding, we would have no need to have commercial access from Rice once a card is opened up and access to the building that's going to be on the commercial.
I think
property.
if I'm reading the tea leaves in here, we're leaning towards approval. The hurdle's going to be on council.
But I guarantee you, after the fact, we would want to rezone it back again just to alleviate
But through this
potential problems you were talking about.
But there's nothing we can do to compel you to do that in this process.
I understand.
So I think that getting a creative site development engineer that can run through different things besides the zone change process might be beneficial. But what we're looking at is a zone change. So.
Right.
And we can't put conditions on a zone change.
No, I'm not asking that. I'm not saying that. It's just, from my perspective, that would be something that would be beneficial to everybody involved after the fact. No strings attached, but we would have no need to have the commercial access then from Rice, and then maybe let it go back to the R1. Right. Anyway, thank you.
All in? All done?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by raising your right hand.
Come on, Daryl.
All those opposed? You in?
I was in, sorry.
You were in.
I was short on that one, but yes.
This passes 4-1, which is probably a good thing. It's not a majority. Zone changes do have supermajority privileges, so I'm comfortable sending it to the council with a 4-1. My comment would be that again, my reason for voting yes was I don't think it's right for the city to put zoning on top of a property that splits it and basically segments a person from their commercial property when there was no access to begin with. So that's the sole reason for voting yes. I understand that yes, it will go GC, and that's a straight zone, but I'm okay with that in this case. Either way, it has its pluses and minuses. So anyway.
You never thought you had to defend an approval?
I think we've defended approvals before, actually, which is an odd case where we're for something and council would be maybe against it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Moving on to item 4, discussion items, Commissioner's Activity Report.
This is working on the flooded areas.
I guess when I was sitting in my home wondering if the flood waters were going to rise up to the and flood us out, I go back to looking at all these plats that we've looked at over the past, for myself, 3 or 4 years now, and going, well, these detention areas really matter. I had and anybody that knows my history with detention bonds and such knows that I really didn't have a whole lot of faith in them, but realized that there was a plan for my area and it worked. And what I was afraid of was that plan was going to fill up. But I think a lot of Pearland was that way. Was able to relieve some of the neighbors' concerns when I said the water's not rising any further, it's going somewhere else. And then once we could get out, realized that it did go to the regional detention, which was full to the top of Mary's Creek. So if it would have rained further to fill up over the railroad tracks, we would have all been in trouble in West Pearland. So I think it worked, and I can't believe I did field one question from Tennessee that called and asked, where did all the water go? Where did y'all put 50 some odd inches of rain? I said, well, we're all asking that question too, why we didn't get flooded out. But I guess that's a testament, as much as we have issues here and there, that the system has worked. I mean, we've had a lot of people flooded, and I think we've got work to do in those areas to help some of the older communities, but it is working, which was a relief.
Yeah, we had basically the same issue. We were out there in back 15 years ago, 16 years ago, when they bought the land in back of us on Mary's Creek and put in the detention pond. Everybody got mad because they removed 70 foot of trees. And they were all griping and stuff, and we were all out there and said, how many of y'all lived here when we first did this? Yeah. And I said, how many of y'all were griping about them trees being removed? Oh, yeah. I said, you griping today? No, I ain't griping today. Apparently somebody knew what they were doing. And this will be my last meeting probably for at least 1 or 2 meetings.
Okay.
Good luck.
We wish you well with that.
Yeah.
So item 2, next P&Z regular meeting, October 2nd. Does anybody know if they're not going to be here?
I'll be here.
I'm probably not. If I am, I'll be hobbling around.
So we're down to 4. Do we know if somebody asked a question earlier if council is interviewing for P&Z?
Applications are coming in, but a final decision hasn't been made, and that's kind of what the city secretary's office. But I can verify with them tomorrow.
My best guess is that until the budget is passed, they won't be meeting in executive session for appointments. They're going to be focused on the budget issues.
Okay. So it's just real important that we communicate with staff and let them know if we're not going to be here, we're down to 4.
When is the next meeting?
October 2nd.
Second.
October 2nd.
It's like 3 weeks.
Do I need to come get you and wheel you in here?
I'll make it do that. I'll be dragging a leg, but I'll make it.
Nothing else on the agenda. Moving to item 5. We're going to adjourn at 10:25.
Earlier than that. Earlier than that. Earlier than that.